Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé. Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Gauss.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Joseph. Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles. Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député War.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet. Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Millar.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell. Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson. Monsieur le député Andrews.
Citoyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Malade.
Il faudrait que Monsieur le député Southern est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le député Tadier.
Défaut.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Madame le député Moore.
Défaut.
Monsieur le député Joseph.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Stevenson.
It's away on maternity. Résultats sont constitués. Someone going to raise the defo on Deputy Tadier?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, very well. I would, on behalf of members, like to welcome His Excellency to the Chamber this morning. There are a number of subordinate enactments under B. Also, a number of matters have been presented or laid as described on the consolidated order paper under section C. The following have been lodged. Draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law, P78, Third Amendment, lodged by Deputy Balash. Draft Harbours Inshore Safety Jersey Amendment Regulations, P3, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable and Economic Development. Draft Shipping Jersey Amendment Law, P4, lodged by the same Minister. Amendment to Standing Orders, deadline for challenging written responses, P5, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. A National Day for Jersey, P6, lodged by the Minister for International Development. Rate Appeal Board appointment members, P7, lodged by the Minister for Treasury and Resources. We move now to appointments, and the first, or the only matter under that heading is the appointment of a member of the Jersey Police Authority. In a moment, I'll ask the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs for her nomination, before then asking for any other nominations from the floor. If there is more than one nomination, we'll proceed to a secret ballot. Connétable cannot serve as members of the authority, neither can the Minister nor her assistant ministers, nor can anyone who has been a police officer or a member of the honorary police in the last 5 years. It's been recognised that serving on the authority and the Children Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel represents a conflict of interest. Minister.
Sir, you just said the chair, only the chair of the scrutiny panel.
I said that it's recognised that serving on the authority and the Children Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, so anyone who serves on it, it's been recognised as representing a conflict of interest. That is my understanding of the position, yes.
Sir, my apologies, because that isn't what I was advised, and the member who I was going to actually select is actually a member of that panel. I can, I'm just trying to think quickly on my feet, sir, because...
Can I suggest, with the agreement of the Assembly, we defer this until after luncheon?
Yes, sir, that would be helpful. I was racking my brain, sir, as to who the other members were, and there would be other conflicts. So yes. I think that would be better, sir. Thank you.
We can, over that period, ensure that we are correct in saying that that's been recognised as a conflict of interest, but I believe that it has been.
That's fine. Thank you, sir.
Very well. There are no matters under G, no matters under H. We come to written questions, and answers to written questions have been tabled, and therefore we come to oral questions. And the first oral question is asked by Deputy IA of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how much oversight he has of the Battle of Flowers Association and explain the rationale behind the government grant of £270,000 to support the 2024 event? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for this question. Sir, the Battle of Flowers is an independent organisation which makes an application for an event grant from my department based on a series of stretching but achievable performance measures. My officers meet regularly with the Battle of Flowers Association to ensure public money is being spent in accordance with the principles of the Public Finances Manual. The larger one-off grant in 2024 allowed for a reformatting of the event, particularly following disruption after COVID, and participation by every parish. A headliner event act on the first night and additional concerts on days 2 and 3. As a consequence of this extra funding and reformatted event, more than 22,000 people enjoyed the Battle of Flowers last year, a significant uplift with 6,000 more tickets sold on previous years.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has been quoted as saying, "We're awaiting a grant request for 2025 and stand ready to support this." Is this support dependent upon having sight of the 2024 accounts? And is it true that exhibitors have still not been paid for last year's event? Thank you.
So questions as to who has or hasn't been paid for last year's event need to be asked of the Battle of Flowers Association. But my understanding is there are some entities, including possible people, who are still awaiting payment, but I don't know if they're exhibitors or anybody else. That does need to be asked of the Battle of Flowers Association. We are awaiting accounts for the 2024 period, and my understanding is we would want to see those accounts before we're able to supply a grant.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister advise if there is a clear government policy in relation to awarding grants and subsidies for cultural and community events such as Battle of Flowers, Battle of Jersey and similar?
Thank you. The Department requires business plans and an agreed set of performance measures for funding to be released. Officers meet regularly with events organisers and also require a post-event report.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
So my question was, does the policy exist?
I'm assuming the Minister has just articulated the policy, but it might be that's
That was my understanding,
Okay,
sir.
supplementary. Where is the policy published that the independent organisations and charity can review it before applying for the grants?
With regard to arts, culture and heritage grants, because they are wide-ranging from hundreds of thousands of pounds all the way down to hundreds of pounds, that I do not believe there is one policy for all of those, one policy paper. What we have is a set of criteria. These can be found on the Creative Island Partnership, particularly for those smaller grants. And for the larger grants, it is in accordance with the Public Finances Manual that we determine whether grant funding is made available.
I next have Deputies Renouf, Ozef, Dublé, Warren, Miles. No other questions on this one. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister is potentially going to be handing over hundreds of thousands of pounds of public money to support this year's battle. Can he confirm that he has full confidence in the Battle of Flowers Association?
So that is something that I would have to refrain from giving a view on at the moment, because I think it has been well publicised following recent meetings that there is concern amongst the association and questions are being asked amongst the association. It would be my requirement that we need to understand that the association is in good order and is working in the appropriate ways to stage this year's event before being able to provide that funding.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. Is the Minister going to be taking any actions to try and ensure that the Battle of Flowers Association meets the standard, shall we say, to which he would expect for an organisation that he's handing public money to?
Actions in terms of officers engaging with the Battle of Flowers Association, trying to understand where the Battle of Flowers Association is in terms of its governance structures and procedures. These are the sorts of actions that I will be taking. So it is understanding where the Battle of Flowers Association is. It is not, in my view, my remit or my jurisdiction, so to speak, to actually go into the Battle of Flowers and engineer, let's say, change myself. That I think is for the Battle of Flowers Association itself. This is the sort of situation that we see in Jersey where independent third-party organisations, which are not government organisations, the Minister has no vires over them. They therefore have to apply for grant funding in an appropriate fashion, as has been previously mentioned in these answers. And it is on satisfaction of those criteria, particularly with regard to the Public Finances Manual, that any funding would be permitted. But it is not for me to go into the Battle of Flowers Association to, in inverted commas, sort it out. That is not my role.
Deputy Ozef.
Thank you, sir. Having been in the Minister's position before in relation to battle, I was looking in advance of this question to a 2015 report. Would the Minister agree that it is
now well past the time that there is a decisive, forward-looking, positive review of governance of the Battle of Flowers? Because I don't accept, does he not agree that he is responsible for actually ensuring that the organisation in which he's putting public money should be fit for purpose with appropriate governance?
So the grants are given on an annual basis, ordinarily. For some organisations, such as ALOs, we are seeking to see whether it's possible to provide funding on a kind of 3-year basis. But still, those grants will be handed out on an annual basis. In terms of independent third-party organisations such as the Battle of Flowers, I do feel it is the role of the association to get itself in order. I don't think it is the role of government to do that. I think that is government, again, this idea that everyone seeks to government to sort it out. The Battle of Flowers Association is a decades, maybe a century-old organisation. I'm not sure exactly of its age. It is up to those members of that association to ensure that they are fit for purpose. We will determine whether we agree with that in terms of whether then funding is made available. What we will do is provide support, and I'm keen to support the association as it sorts itself out. But it is not for government to sort it out.
So, for follow-up, so the Minister speaks French and he's aware of the word responsabilité, and there's 3 words in English: responsibility, accountability and liability. Does he really think that he can stand in this assembly, where numerous predecessors his have also, together with our constables that are in this assembly, and say that his department is not really going to have anything really responsible or accountable to actually sorting out what is a long outstanding issue of a float builders association and a commercial event organiser? Doesn't he think it's now time to actually put the battle on the right footing going forward and not have this endless questions about public money being wasted and unaccountable?
I don't believe that's what I was talking about, sir. I believe the deputy, to some extent, misrepresents what I was saying. The Battle of Flowers Association is a third-party, independent organisation run by its members. It is incorporated as an association. I am not a member of that association. Maybe the deputy is a member. If so, he is well placed to help try and sort that out. We, as government, will provide the support and advice to the association. We can provide ideas about how they could resolve their problems, and we are more than happy to support them in these ways. But the association itself has to make its own decisions as to how it wants to structure itself. Otherwise, it is no longer an association, it becomes just a part of government. And they are set up as an independent association. We will support them however we can to help them through any changes that they wish to make. And as I said, we're willing to suggest changes, but we cannot make those changes ourselves.
Deputy Dublé.
I just want to understand, sir. I'm hearing the Minister talk about a word, association, and I know it's wrong. So what am I supposed to do, sir? Can I just say to the Minister that he's not intentionally misleading the Assembly? He's
the point
using
of
the
a
word
point of order
association
is, on what do you wish me to rule?
Well, how I can correct the Minister's assertion that it is an association when it's actually a limited company.
Well, I think you've said that. Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. If the changes that the Minister is expecting are not made, is the Minister prepared to limit or not give funding to this organisation? Like, what are the Minister's boundaries in terms of expectations and whether the money is given or not?
I think the Battle of Flowers, which has been going for more than a century, 120 odd years, is an important part of Jersey's calendar and cultural calendar. Therefore, I think it is ideal that we have Battle of Flowers taking place in the summer. We, as a government, can look to provide the event ourselves. We can ask the Battle of Flowers Association to continue to provide the event, or we can seek another means of providing that event. I will make a decision according to the information provided to me by the Battle of Flowers Association. I apologise if it's a limited company, then it's a limited company and the deputy is fine about that. It still doesn't change the fact that it's third party and independent of government. It is its own entity. We are not. The States Assembly is not responsible for the Battle of Flowers Association. The government is not responsible for the Battle of Flowers Association. It is entirely responsible for itself. I will only provide funding when satisfied that that funding will be spent appropriately. Ideally, we would love to see a Battle of Flowers going ahead this year, and I will work with them in all sorts of different ways to try to ensure that that does happen. But I think the Battle of Flowers Association, whether it's a limited company or an association, needs to make some decisions itself, and it needs to get to grips with those decisions quickly. Otherwise, it will find itself in a very difficult situation.
Supplemental question, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister keep the Assembly updated on this and whether the appropriate changes have been made? And also, could the Minister reassure the Assembly that the pot of money for events such as this, that there is enough to go around for other events that are important to the community, such as Pride and other cultural events?
There is enough for many events. It's impossible to say there is enough for all events because the list of potential events is never ending. And at some point, the pot of money does run out. But we have budgeted for certain major events this year, Battle of Flowers being one of them, Pride, I believe, being another. But, you know, every member of the Assembly and every person in Jersey could come forward with a grant application for an event, and obviously we could not fund all of those, so it's not a never-ending pot of money.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister confirm that he or his team had sight of the 2023 Battle of Flower accounts before they gave out a larger sum this year?
I would have to confirm with my team.
Supplemental question, Deputy Wall. Final, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister confirm that he is funding the Battle of Flowers for their 2024 overspend in addition to the grant funding they're applying for 2025?
I'm unable to confirm that, sir, because those decisions have not yet been made.
Supplemental question, Deputy Miles. Final supplementary, Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has stated that he will be working with the Battle of Flowers Association to secure the long-term future of the event. Is there any limit as to how much the Minister will grant to the Battle of Flowers Association? And will this lead to underfunding of other island events? Thank you, sir.
Question in the similar vein to Deputy Doublé's question. Yes, there are limits. Absolutely, of course, there are limits because there is no never-ending pot of money. So there are definitely limits as to how much I'd be prepared to fund. I could not say exactly what that limit is because I would need to see a proposal from the Battle of Flowers Association before I can fund it. Last year, it was such a proposal that led to slightly increased funding in order to get it back on its feet, the event back on its feet, particularly after the disruption caused by COVID. It made sense. I think there's an understanding in the island and a desire in the island to see the Battle of Flowers modernise. A 120-year-old event does need to move with the times. It's an incredibly valuable community event. I've sat in battle sheds helping build floats with my parents, with my daughter. The fact that so many generations of islanders can come together to work on floats is absolutely magnificent, and that is the heart of the actual community element of the Battle of Flowers Association. And I agree with members, that's what is so wonderful about the Battle of Flowers. But the event itself has, I would say, in my personal view, not moved with the times in the way that it has needed to. Last year was an attempt to do that, and a future funding will depend on a proposal that satisfies the requirements, both in terms of governance and ambition, in terms of wanting to put on an event that people wish to see.
Second question is...
Sir, just quickly, will it lead to underfunding of other island events? Can the Minister respond, please?
Well, you have about a second and a half to respond to that, Minister.
Not intentionally, no.
Very well. We come to question 2. The Connotables and Helly will ask of the Attorney General.
Thank you, sir. I understood from the graph this question was being put to the Minister of Home Affairs. Is that now not the case, please?
I've simply gone from the consolidated order paper, which I understood to be... well, as I say, I've gone from the consolidated order paper. Do you have any objection?
No, not at all, sir. Thank you, sir. I just have to change the beginning of my question. Will His Majesty's Attorney General for 2024 advise the average length of time experienced by islanders between being charged with an offence and subsequently discharged from prosecution or acquitted, to whom defence costs have been awarded?
Forgive me. So the Law Officers Department does not keep statistics on cases in which defence costs have been awarded. The Magistrates' Court and the Royal Court do maintain some statistics, and we have made inquiries of them. The Magistrates' Court only keeps statistics where an award of defence costs has gone to taxation, which is to say where a dispute over the amount of costs claimed has been resolved by a taxing officer. There were 2 cases in 2024 in which an award of defence costs by the magistrate was taxed. The Magistrates' Court does not keep separate statistics on the length of time between charge and conclusion in cases in which an award of defence costs has been made. The Royal Court statistics record that in 2024 there were 3 cases in which an award of defence costs was made. Across those 3 cases, the average length of time between charge and conclusion was 131 working days, I think a little over 26 weeks.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. In the case of a local couple whose nightmare began in January 2023 when they were charged with a driving offence and acquitted in August last year, a year and a half later, does the Solicitor General believe it is fair and reasonable that they are still waiting for reimbursement of tens of thousands of pounds of legal costs without any communication from the department concerned?
Well, that's, first of all, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to discuss a specific case in a forum such as this. Second, I can't comment upon the delay, if there is one, in the execution of an award of defence costs by the court administration. That would be a matter for the Home Affairs Minister, or ultimately, can I suggest something that the Connotab might take up with the Royal Court Gref or the Magistrates Gref, depending on which court made the order.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Solicitor General advise who is monitoring the refunds that needs to be given to the people, who is monitoring, and how, if the Law Department has any communication regarding the...
No, it's not a matter which the Law Officers Department has any involvement in. When the court makes an award of defence costs, as I understand it, those costs are paid out of the court and case budget. That is a matter for the court administration to take care of. It's not a matter for the Law Officers Department, which is quite separate from the court service.
Supplemental, Deputy Gardner. Deputy Tadier.
Could the Solicitor General answer to whom the courts and the administration of the courts are answerable in a case such as this, where there's a complaint being made by constituents to a politician about a matter like this?
I assume that the court administration ultimately it lies in the responsibility of the bailiff as the island's chief judge.
And so, how does the constable or any member of this assembly seek restitution or resolution to such a matter in this assembly on this? If the question, I presume, if the question is being put to the Attorney General, it's because he has some remit in this area. So, can he advise maybe what the course of action for the constable should be?
The Attorney General has no remit in this area. He is quite independent of the court service, and the court service is quite independent of the Attorney General. I don't know the answer shortly to the question that's asked. If there is an issue with a court costs order not yet being paid, that is a matter that has to be taken up in the first instance with, I would think, the judicial greffier, either of the Royal Court or the Magistrates' Gref, if the order was made by the Magistrates' Court.
A final supplementary, Connotab St.
Thank you, sir. I'm in a slightly difficult position because I was going to ask my final supplementary question of the Minister for Home Affairs. which I don't know that it would be appropriate to ask it of the Solicitor, His Majesty's Solicitor General, but could I just ask, perhaps in principle, that does the Solicitor General think it would be appropriate for a member of this Assembly to bring a matter like this to the States Assembly for a decision, as in fact I did the first proposition I ever tabled as a deputy, which was in respect of a local hotelier whose building had been undermined by the actions of the then Housing Department. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the Constable's question. I'm sure that's my fault. If I'm asked, do I think it's constitutionally appropriate for this Assembly to involve itself in matters to do with the courts and the award of court costs, the answer is no, I don't think it is appropriate.
Come to question 3. The Deputy Coles will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister detail what work, if any, has been undertaken in regards to an IT strategy and IT security framework for government to ensure that it is fully equipped to handle the growing use of AI tools?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. An AI working group was set up by Digital Services in July 2023 to advise on the government's strategic direction in that area. As a result of this group's work, Digital Services developed draft AI policies and standards, which are currently under review, but aiming to be published shortly. The government's approach to IT security is guided by well-established national frameworks and best practice, including from the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre and the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which helps protect our island systems and data, sir. We also have change control processes for our digital systems to ensure we can embed innovative technologies such as AI whilst maintaining the appropriate safeguards, sir, not least to protect government and islanders' data. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. As I recently went on a CPA trip around AI security, part of the influence is on how our security frameworks work around critical infrastructure, such as energy, supply and telecoms. Is the Chief Minister confident that the policies that are produced nationally would include Jersey in such a scheme?
Well, sir, Jersey works closely with the UK agencies in those areas and looks to adapt or adopt the safeguards and procedures that be relevant to us. So the answer that I think in most cases would be yes.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The question of AI use in government is being debated quite a lot in the UK at the moment and being seen as a potential to massively increase the efficiency of delivery of government services. I wonder if the government is approaching AI from this angle, not just from a security angle.
Well, sir, I think AI will increasingly be embedded in every day in the lives of everyone and everyday tools and applications to enhance personal and professional tasks. For example, in government, it could include integration into daily life and processes, healthcare advancement, workplace transformations in relation to how routine tasks are dealt with. So there's, it will sort of, I think AI will touch all areas of personal and professional life as it develops. What we want to make sure is we have the appropriate safeguards in place from a government perspective for when we utilise AI that, first and foremost, government and islanders' data is protected.
Supplemental question?
Yes, sir. I thank the Chief Minister for his response. It was quite a passive description of the role of AI. It will do things to us. I wonder if he could perhaps take a more interventionist view, and could I ask the question, therefore, would he consider putting anybody in government, either at a ministerial level or at an officer level, in charge of seeing how AI could be positively used to increase efficiencies within government?
Well, so I wouldn't think at this stage we need to create a ministerial role for that, sir. That sits in the departments of the Chief Minister and for the Assistant Ministers. But as I stated in the opening answer, an AI working group has been set up and have developed draft policies and standards which will, as I understand it, also address how we might apply AI in certain aspects, certain streams of government work, sir.
Thank you, sir. Given the exponential rise in the use of AI, both in governments and by what I might describe as bad actors, would the Chief Minister confirm that he feels that his department has got adequate resource to deal with this at the moment?
Yes, sir.
Supplemental,
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister confirm that he will be using AI to write his own speeches in the future?
No comment, sir.
Tempted to ask if you wrote that yourself, Chief.
Yes, I did, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister mentioned that we leverage national frameworks, and in January 2025, the UK's Government Digital Service published a policy paper titled A Blueprint for Modern Digital Government, in which it outlines its vision and strategy to continue to deliver modern digital public services. Has the Chief Minister considered the vision and action points outlined in this, and whether there are any lessons to be learned?
No, sir, but I wasn't aware of its existence, and I thank the Deputy for pointing me towards it. I'll certainly take a look at it, sir.
Supplementary to that?
Thank you, sir. Yes, one of the action points in that is harness the power of AI for public good. But whether looking to the UK, Estonia, Denmark, New Zealand or others, does the Chief Minister not see a significant risk to Jersey's reputation if we are not investing in better digital services and using any tool available to deliver better public services?
I think the short answer to that is we want our digital services to be at the forefront of technology. We want to make sure we utilise the skills and resources we put into that to deliver the very best outcomes for islanders through the use of technology. We want to be at the forefront, that's why we are taking the use and development of AI seriously, so, and it's a work in progress, and I hope we start to see, not just as an organisation, more use of it internally, so, but I'd like to see support the way we can help it embed itself in to enhance the use for islanders on an everyday basis.
I have Deputy Gardner, then final supplementary. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. In the absence of the IT government strategy, in budget 2025, departments had to cut 20% of each department spent on IT. How the Chief Minister prioritise technology project, including IT, across the departments, ensuring alignment with overall government priorities rather than on departmental base?
So just to, I don't like to correct the Deputy, but we didn't have to cut the IT budget by 20%. Previous years' growth bids were reduced by 20%, which is a significantly different situation. So I am confident that our Digital Service Department has the right budget and resources to do all of the work we're expecting it to do to maintain the standards and levels of that we would expect in relation to the development of our IT strategies and policies, and the integration and the way we embed AI in our government services moving forward. So we are well resourced and adequately budgeted for 2025.
Supplemental question, Deputy Gardner.
I would ask if the Chief Minister can emphasise how he prioritises between the departments to across government priorities, and when the IT strategy for government could be seen and delivered.
Well, that was all done, sir, as part of a lengthy budget process, which was explained in detail during the budget and debate. So that's how we reprioritised, and that's how we allocated the budgets.
So it wasn't a question about the budget. When the IT strategy is planned to be delivered?
Well, we have a number of IT strategies, if you like, in progress, and I'm not sure if she could be a bit more specific. I mean, is there a particular part
Absolutely
of the IT,
specific. It has been promised that IT internal government strategy, which overarching strategy for digital services within the government, has been developed over the last several years. My question, when this strategy will be presented?
I'm trying to sort of relate that to the question on AI, sir. I mean, if it is related.
Yes, I have to say, having heard you redefine the question, Deputy, I'm not sure it's directly related to the use of AI and the growing use of AI tools, and therefore I don't allow it. Final supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And I'll try to keep this simple, but it's not a simple question. AI, to be properly function, requires access to appropriate amounts of data, as well as I'm trying to consolidate that. So, AI requires data to make informed decisions. So for AI to function properly, it would need proper data sharing agreements and systems that communicate with each other. Does the Chief Minister believe that proper data sharing agreements can be established within government so that any AI tool can make proper and informed decisions? And if so, will those decisions have a human input rather than AI delivering the final decision?
I think that is a question for AI, sir.
Yes.
I think in principle, yes, I think that can be achieved, but the Digital Services Department are putting the emphasis on change control process in the digital systems to ensure they can embed AI and other innovative technologies whilst maintaining the appropriate safeguards of government and citizens' data. So that's at the forefront of the work they're doing. I'm not sure how they will achieve that, but I know that is high priority. That is the aim. I think if we're going to use AI, we need to make sure that private data is protected.
Sorry, so there was the point about human decision-making.
Will it ultimately be human decision-making assisted by AI, or will it be AI decision-making, Chief Minister, I think is the question?
Well, so I think the objective of AI is to reduce the input of human decision-making. But of course, at the end of the day, it's only as good as the information that it has access to. So whilst we can never let it replace, human intervention, it is growing and expanding so fast across how it impacts positively on society. So I think it's a question that needs very careful consideration and can't be answered on the hoof by myself, sir. But from a government perspective, we would like to use AI to improve productivity and improve government services to enhance, the experience of islanders.
Question 4, Deputy Jeune will ask of the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister detail why Jersey has not introduced specific legislation to regulate corporate manslaughter, particularly given its adoption in other jurisdictions?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Work began on corporate manslaughter in 2023 to develop domestic offence broadly in line with the UK Government Manslaughter and Corporate Homicide Act 2007, with improvements based on lessons learned from case law. A set of initial instructions was developed in September 2023, but there were still some outstanding questions, including how to address small jurisdiction issues, such as where an offending organisation may be a monopoly service provider or the local arm of a larger organisation headquartered in other jurisdictions. Officers then moved to joint working with legal advisors to address those questions. However, since early 2024, resources have been redirected to meet the commitment of this government to progress all recommendations of the Task Force on Violence Against Women and Girls, which has required me to deprioritise other work, including the development of the corporate manslaughter law. Therefore, it will not be brought to this Assembly within this term.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. Does the Minister believe that existing legislation in Jersey sufficiently addresses corporate accountability for fatalities?
Minister.
Sir, there is actually other legislation, and it's gone off the top of my head in relation to what it's called, but it's actually common law. However, that isn't really quite as sufficient as a corporate manslaughter law would be, because it is very, how can I put it, it is very sort of finite in what it would actually capture.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has said that the work has been deprioritised because of work on the violence against women and girls work. Can she say what legislation has been paused? Give the Assembly a list of what legislation has been paused in order to prioritise that work, and indeed what other work has been given priority. In other words, a list of the priorities and things that have been deprioritised, so we can understand what work is actually underway. Sorry.
Well, firstly, thank you for the contribution to the fighting fund. Secondly, I'm afraid that question really takes us outside the parameters of corporate manslaughter, unless it is limited to corporate manslaughter.
I thought that if the answer given raised issues, that you could follow up with a question on those.
It has to be reasonably tied to the original question, otherwise it's not a supplementary question for the original question. Otherwise one could end up potentially down a rabbit hole. I'm not suggesting that in this case. So did you wish to link your question to corporate manslaughter?
No, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Chairman.
It's very disappointing to hear from the Minister that she has deprioritised such important work, because in the UK, when it became justified the introduction of corporate manslaughter law, it was due to create a framework for prosecuting organisations rather than individuals when serious management failures led to fatalities. Why does the Minister believe this does not qualify in Jersey, especially due to recent events?
Sir, I think the Deputy has actually misquoted what I said. I did not say that it wasn't important, because it is exceptionally important, and I fully understand what she's saying in relation to corporate manslaughter. But of course, corporate manslaughter is not a magic solution to hold people accountable necessarily for deaths. It is directed at a company, not a person, and so can only result in a fine. If that fine is sufficiently large, it can therefore put a company out of business. But it goes no further than current law to directly penalise the guilty person behind any negligent death. Obviously, there can be things that are made in relation to remuneral work in relation to that company, but it doesn't actually hold an individual to account in those circumstances.
Well, we come to question 5. The Deputy Ozef will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. In the light of higher living and housing costs in Jersey compared to the United Kingdom, will the Minister kindly state the specific long-term policies, if any, she intends to introduce to address structural inflationary pressures in Jersey?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in most economies, there will almost always be some degree of inflation, and therefore the term structural inflationary pressures is a little confusing. Small amounts of inflation are positive, and indeed deflation can be as bad, if not worse, for an economy than high inflation. Comparing jurisdictions is always difficult and must be done with great care. Indeed, currently, inflation is lower in Jersey than it is in the UK. That said, the measurements themselves are often different, and therefore comparisons can be misleading. RPI in Jersey is currently 2.5% and falling. This contrasts well with the UK RPI, which is currently 3.5%, and the UK Consumer Prices Index, which is also 2.5%. Both of these are calculated differently from Jersey's RPI. Guernsey, as another comparison, is currently 4.6%. That said, we are not complacent about the cost of living pressures and the impact of recent high inflation. The Deputy will also know that monetary policy, the key lever to tackle inflation, is not in our control, and in fact, with higher interest rates, are contributing to the cost of living pressures for islanders. This means that fiscal policy and other levers such as competition become even more important for a small island economy. The Ministerial Cost of Living Group is tasked with addressing these issues in as strategic a manner as possible. Examples of work that this government has taken forward include increasing the minimum wage to counter cost of living issues while providing support for productivity, improvements to the competition law, and a commitment to keeping government fees and charges as low as possible. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Would the Minister not agree that the results of, albeit an imperfect comparison with the United Kingdom, but she's right to say RPIX versus the UK Consumer Prices Index, does she not agree that there is a structural problem because the FPP warned her of that?
So to the extent there is a structural problem, it must be due to the fact that we are a small island which has to import everything. We are importing inflation that arises in other jurisdictions as a consequence of that. And as I've just said, there is very little that we can do because we cannot control interest rates and we are subject to interest rates in other jurisdictions. We are seeking to address those as best we can and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. To address the high cost of living and high housing costs just mentioned, would the Minister agree with rental stabilisation measures being introduced? And if not, why not?
I think rent stabilisation measures is moving into another realm, and I think they could equally, while they may be beneficial, they could have many adverse unintended consequences.
Supplemental question, Deputy Kovac. Very well. Deputy IA.
Thank you, sir. Although our inflation rate is running at 2.5%, I notice that the cost of the JEP has risen by 20% yesterday. Does the Minister condone such rises? Thank you.
Sir, I can't possibly comment on the costs of the JEP, and I am sure they have to take their own pressures in terms of print and staffing into account as well. I think you have to ask the editor that question.
Presumably no supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Joseph.
Would the Minister, given the fact that many islanders, as she has explained very well, are clearly feeling the pinch and feeling the effects of the cost of living, would she be of the view that there is a need to, not accepting the fact that you can't do anything about it, would she believe that actually a wider group of backbenchers or ministers together would be useful in dealing what is, I think, from what I hear, the biggest issue that Jersey people are facing, the rising cost of living, and the thing that we can do something about, which is the domestic economy? Would you think that actually we need to actually have some more thought and work done on this, rather than just relying upon simple statements that we can't do anything about it?
So what I said was that we can't do anything about things like interest rate because we can't control monetary policy. Government is doing everything it can to address cost of living issues for islanders, which all the figures tell us that the cost of living, inflation is falling, and it has fallen quite considerably since its peak in 2022, and even then that was lower than the UK. We are doing what we can. The Cost of Living Group is considering that closely. I will ask the Ministerial Cost of Living Group at the next meeting whether they think there is merit in including more backbenchers in that group or taking views of backbenchers. But the thing I would just say, as someone who does travel to the UK regularly, and who watches the news and has been in other countries, we are not alone in facing cost of living pressures. Cost of living is as much an issue in the UK as it is in very many other jurisdictions worldwide and across Europe, and we are doing everything we can to minimise the impact of that on islanders on low incomes. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
We come to question 6 that that Deputy Porre will ask the Minister for Social Security. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister undertake to investigate the practices of the Employment Tribunal, in particular where the dates for tribunals are set to when complaints are out of the island, and whether this has caused any problems due to poor internet connection or power sources in the complaints locations? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you. I thank the Deputy for her question. The legislation governing the function of the tribunal, for which I hold ministerial responsibility, requires that the tribunal ensures that both parties are treated fairly and that proceedings avoid unnecessary formality and can also respond flexibly as the demand of the case requires. However, the day-to-day operation of the tribunal is and must be a matter for the tribunal itself as an independent judicial body free from political interference. As such, I am not able to comment on the detailed operational issues such as the ones the Deputy sets out in her questions. If the Deputy does have any concerns in relation to a specific case, I suggest that she refers them to the Judicial Greffier or to the courts.je website, which details the appropriate complaints process.
Supplemental question, Deputy Puri. Very well, we come now to question 7. That Deputy Renniff will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Will the Minister provide details of the evidence that informed his proposed reorganisation of the health service? I do beg your pardon, sir. Will the Minister provide details of the evidence that informed his proposed reorganisation of the health service with particular reference to the relationship between the service and government?
Minister.
Sir, the proposed reorganisation of the health service relies on the evidence obtained by talking extensively to a wide range of health professionals, patients, charities and health service providers, then, in conjunction with my assistant ministers, applying a combination of commercial experience and common sense to reach a conclusion. It may be helpful to mention, sir, that 2 of the assistant ministers are experienced healthcare professionals and the other has considerable commercial experience. And, sir, that's the same combined and, I believe, sensible approach that's informed the desire to make the health service more self-sufficient. Thank you, sir.
Does that answer include reference to the relationship between the service and government, which was part of the question, Minister?
I believe it does in the last sentence, sir, the same combined approach that's informed the desire to make the health service more self-sufficient.
Thank you very much. Supplemental question, Deputy Renniff.
Yes, sir. One aspect of the relationship between the service that he's proposing and government is unclear to me. Can the Minister confirm that there's no intention to run health as an ALO? In other words, that the Health Partnership Board would commission services perhaps or be separate from the government and therefore be run as an arm's length organisation?
No, there's no intention for it to be an arm's length organisation, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Usually this type of change accompanied by the report of impact, cost, benefit analysis or study or business case. Has the Minister commissioned a cost benefit analysis?
No, I haven't, sir.
Would the Minister explain why not?
Because I don't deem that to be necessary, sir. We're just taking the component parts that we have at the moment and reorganising them, sir.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. My Vice Chair actually asked the question I wanted to ask about ALOs. I'm still not entirely clear, though, if it's not an ALO and it's not going to be entirely part of government, can the Minister provide some clarity on what type of entity exactly it will be?
Well, under the old system, an awful lot of the affairs of health actually were taking place in central government, and it's my opinion that they weren't really receiving the right amount of focus. They were being done away from a health setting, and I believe some of those decisions are better off made by people specialising in those areas. And I would refer particularly to finance. I think we're spending well over £300 million a year. We've now got a finance director appointed who specialises in health finance, and I think that's to our advantage. Having just paid £500,000 to KPMG to try and sort the finances out, I think going forward we require that function to be done in a health setting. Similarly, digital health, a number of other areas, procurement and HR. I think that focus needs to be within a health setting. Ultimately running through government, but actually all of the day-to-day stuff being taken care of by people who specialise in that area, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. The proposed changes that the Minister is talking about, has the full Council of Ministers seen the changes and agreed with them? And if that agreement is in place, was it unanimous?
I keep the council ministers updated on what's going on, and I may continue to have their support, sir.
Very well. Deputy General.
Sorry, sir, I'm not sure the Minister fully answered the question. Was the agreement, is it unanimous?
Has there been a vote on anything?
No, as I've said, I keep the council ministers updated as we go. It's a progressive situation, and I continue to enjoy, I believe, the full support of the council ministers. I've not had anybody sort of argument against what I'm doing at any point, sir.
Deputy General.
Thank you, sir. Has the Minister found any examples of places where the model he's planning already works and works well?
No, and I have to confess I haven't looked elsewhere. I've just spent quite a lot of time taking a look at what seems to be wrong and done my best to put it as straight as I can, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy General.
Yes, sir. So just to follow on from that answer, does that mean that the Minister came to this specific restructure without testing other alternatives? Is this the only one that he came to, or was there other ones, a selection of choices of restructuring of what that could be, and he chose this one as the best from a cost-benefit analysis, or was there, or is this the?
This is the only one. I make the point again, I've not done a cost-benefit analysis. It's basically looking at, we've consulted very widely with probably hundreds of people in a good number of consultation processes, and I have to say I cannot recall a single health professional arguing against these essential principles. So perhaps I should have spent a little bit more time looking at other jurisdictions, but there's a job to do, and I think the health service requires improvement, and we're moving as quickly as we can, sir.
I have Deputy Miles, then final supplementary. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister tell us how the reorganisation will deliver improvements to things like waiting lists, safety and quality of patient care?
My experience of it in the 12 months that I've been there sort of indicates to me that all the various sections of health provision are too distant from one another, and a lot of things fall through the cracks between departments at this point in time. I'm putting together a health partnership board where all the key players sit around the table at the required times and make those decisions together. So I think decision making is going to be a lot better, and I'm going to be looking at digital in a different way, and I'll be coming back to the Assembly on that, because I think digital connectivity is also going to help. So it's basically people talking to each other and connecting with each other, and I think we can create a great deal of efficiency that will bring down waiting lists and improve the service, hopefully quite dramatically, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Miles. Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
So we're talking about a very major reorganisation of health delivery. The Minister has said in a written answer that he is not planning a public consultation. He's confirmed in this session that he has done no cost-benefit analysis. There's no examples of anywhere that has tried this before, and no alternatives have been considered. Is the Minister comfortable that he is essentially making us all the subjects of an experiment for which he has no evidence?
I was asked in the initial question about evidence, and I said quite clearly that the evidence was obtained by talking extensively to a wide range of health professionals, patients, charities and health service providers. These are the people that are providing the care. They're all in agreement. Deputy Renouf may choose not to be in agreement, but that's a matter for him. I tried to explain this at the last Assembly, sir. I'm trying again. I seem to be failing. I'm very happy to entertain the Deputy to a private meeting to go through it in more detail if he still has concerns, sir.
Well, we come to question 8 that Deputy Wilson will ask of the Minister for External Relations. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how the government is responding to the statement by President Trump that the OECD, Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, global tax deal, has no force or effect within the United States, and whether in his assessment it will affect companies registered for tax in Jersey whose business is with the United States, and the impact, if any, on tax receipts in Jersey?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The US President's executive orders are directed at taxes in other jurisdictions, which are characterised as being discriminatory and extraterritorial. Informed US and global commentators interpret this to mean digital services taxes and the Pillar 2 undertaxed profit rule. Jersey's multinational corporate income tax was specifically designed to support US groups, given the mismatch between the US tax system and the OECD Pillar 2 rules. It is a domestic Jersey tax on Jersey profits, which is not discriminatory or extraterritorial. As with other jurisdictions globally, we await the publication of further information about the US Treasury's review in 60 days' time, which will provide a better understanding of their focus, but the government remains confident that our Pillar 2 framework is appropriate.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister give some detail as to what assessment he's made about the potential for any regulatory change?
So I wonder if the Deputy could just give a little bit more clarity.
Thank you, sir. We are actually trading with America and Europe, and I wondered whether the Minister could explain how we might balance those and whether there will be any changes to our current regulatory arrangements.
So I'm quite happy to do that. It's not directly connected with Pillar 2, but the Deputy raises an interesting point whereby we are currently used, particularly in the fund sector and increasingly, and we hope increasingly, in the private wealth sector, for American funds who are investing globally, some of those in the EU. And although it's not the Pillar 2 work, because that's dealt with by the OECD, the other executive order about American trade first and what we see in regard to tariffs may have implications in due course that we will have to understand and manage when again there is further clarity on that.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister concerned that behind President Trump's specific executive orders lies a wider desire to repatriate business to the United States to enhance US tax revenues? For example, the Republic of Ireland has highlighted the danger that some of their large American corporations may be persuaded to repatriate to the United States. Is he worried about that wider point that may arise as a result of the continuing development of President Trump's thinking beyond the executive orders?
Of course, we know that the new president made great play about putting America first and delivering on his policy aims, and we've seen that playing out very publicly in regard to his near neighbours over the last 24, 48 hours. The reality is that we in Jersey must hold our nerve, because in times of global uncertainty, we are a safe harbour, and we can be used to garner investments and offer security and stability right at the core of our economy and facilitate those who want to invest globally, be they European businesses, be they US businesses, or be they global businesses. So we actually can help facilitate some of the policy aims of President Trump by offering access into Europe and more globally, and offering certainty, stability and a safe harbour.
Supplemental question, Deputy. I have Deputy Osif, Deputy Jean, and final supplementary. Deputy Osif.
Sir, thank you, sir. Mindful of the fact that the USA never actually signed up to the OECD Pillar 1 in the first place, they had their, as the Minister will know, the GILTI, G-I-L-T-I, the Global Tax, Intangible Tax, Low Taxed Income version. And Jersey did not seek to try and get double tax in the arrangements that were debated before this Assembly. Still, subject to all of those positive caveats, does the Minister have any concern about the likelihood of the profits from the revenues from Pillar 2 actually being remitted and collecting by Jersey, and I say that because of the importance of funding the hospital if we don't get it. Is he happy that we can still kind of rely on that income in this global world?
So the Deputy is absolutely right, of course. The US government didn't change its tax code to deal with the OECD Global Tax Initiative. Rather, it felt initially that its GILTI was just going to be accepted as global compliant. That was not the case, and that's why we see the situation that we're in now. It doesn't come as a surprise to us here in Jersey because we've engaged with both Republicans and Democrats on the House over the course of the last couple of years, so we knew what Democrats were thinking. There will be more certainty when Treasury have published, US Treasury have published their report in 60 days. We remain confident about our overall framework, but we've got to be careful that we're equally not over confident. We gave a very cautious projection about our base case. We know that there are only 1,400 in-scope companies anyway. There's a small subset of US companies. Until we understand what the US Treasury says in its report and how the OECD responds to it, we remain confident. But there could in due course be implications, and that's why for us it's important that we maintain those relationships in Washington, we maintain those relationships in the OECD. But when it comes to Pillar 2, as the Deputy next to him asked about how we straddle those two things, we'll need to continue to do that.
Supplemental question?
I don't want to take the fire away from my colleague Deputy here, who's absolutely right in answering the question. Could I say, is the Assistant Minister still content then in this global tectonic changing world of needing to go for growth and getting business to Jersey? Is he still going to stand by the fact that Jersey Finance's grant was cut?
I'm not sure that stays within the parameters of the question.
It does, sir, because actually it's about going and selling Jersey, isn't it?
In your view, it does. Yes.
But it's that fundamental. It's fundamental.
Well, it may be fundamental to something, but it's not fundamental to the question, Deputy, and I'm afraid I don't allow it.
So I think the question about remaining competitive and being a safe harbour and playing to our strengths of certainty and stability in a
Can I raise a point of order?
You may raise a point of order, Deputy,
So
yes.
if the question's not been ruled in order, is the answer allowed to be given?
My own view is no, it's not, and I was about to come to say that. It may be there are opportunities to say the sorts of things that need to be or wish to be said, either here or in another place, but I've ruled the question out of order, yes. Very well. Deputy Schön.
Thank you, sir. And in fact, Deputy Joseph asked my question regarding the fact that the Council of Ministers budget referenced Pillar 2 tax receipts and paying towards the hospital as part of that. And though the Minister has said that the policy at the moment is wait and see, does the Minister, will the Minister and the Council of Ministers be discussing alternatives on how to fund the hospital if the Pillar 2 tax receipts are not able to be retrieved from 2026?
So as I said, US potentially affected companies, although we won't know until the US Treasury publishes its report and what its recommendations are to the OECD around rule or order, and therefore what the OECD's response will be about those requested or suggested changes. But so despite it being a small subset of a small subset anyway, we remind ourselves that we were very, very cautious in our base case analysis that went into the budget, just over 50 million coming in from Pillar 2. So we reduced that down by the subset. And in regard to the hospital, the allocation from that money was allocation to provide the interest on the funding of the hospital, not the funding directly. So we will continue to, as I say, work with our partners. We remain confident at this point in time, but it's a highly uncertain world in which we live, we believe that we can continue to win business and therefore mitigate any downside or detrimental effects that might come in due course.
Supplemental question.
Yes, sir, thank you. And I would like to understand from the Minister and from his answer just then whether Jersey will join other partners in ensuring that Pillar 2 is kept to what the agreement of what it should be, in ensuring that there is fairer taxation around the world, and if Jersey will ensure that they will keep that message as they go forward in negotiations with the OECD.
So Jersey government will always put, be careful how I sign this, the people of Jersey first. And I think that's exactly what members of this Assembly and Islanders would expect. And by doing so, we want to remain competitive and be attractive to business. At the same time, of course, we engage with international fora to make sure that we can play our part. The US, the main funder of the OECD, has, through its new president, said that it withdraws from this particular tax agenda. We've seen overnight it also withdrawing from the UN tax agenda. So that's not surprising. We will continue to engage. We will continue to make our case so that both the US and the OECD understand the nuances and the positivity of what Jersey offers as a centre for global investment around the world. And that's the position that we'll continue to take.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir, and thank the Minister for his response on that. I wonder if he could expand more on the statement he's just made about how he will put Jersey first, and how the position that is currently being stated from the US President will affect plans to grow and expand financial service provisions in the future.
So I thank the Deputy for that question. It is incredibly important, as I've said, that we continue to remain engaged both in the US at Washington and at the OECD in Paris and with wider colleagues. We believe that our framework for Pillar 2 stands us in good stead, but we are not complacent, which is why, so at the end of last year, at the end of November or probably just in December, I reallocated some of my departmental budget to Jersey Finance, roughly the amount that the other deputy was questioning me about, in order to absolutely focus on growing our presence in the US, in order that we are and remain in a good place. I cannot overemphasize, sir, in times of global turmoil that we're seeing all around us, whether that's in Europe or it's emanating from the USA. We are a safe harbour. We offer stability, we offer certainty for investors, and we must make that noise loud and clear from the rooftops. We will put Jersey first. We will maintain Jersey as a competitive and environment that investors can choose with confidence.
We come now to question 9. The Deputy Alex Curtis will ask of the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what work, if any, is being undertaken to review and update the scoring systems and methodologies used by commercial services in procurement to ensure the recognition of the value of procuring locally and of building talent and skills in the island? And if this review is not being undertaken, why not?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. The Treasury Business Plan for 2025 includes a refresh project of procurement and commercial services, which will include consideration of ways to measure and improve current procurement practice. This will include the scoring systems and methodologies which form part of the selection and award process, with a view to making the process more proportionate and to support opportunities for local businesses. There is already a requirement for social value commitments to be included in all tenders with a value of over £100,000, with a 10% weighting of the evaluation score for social value commitments. Examples of where this has provided benefit to the island in 2024 include the creation of 7 apprenticeships, 8 prison leavers having been employed on projects, the creation of 27 new roles for local people with 6 people hired through Back to Work, and 2 people hired through the Jersey Employment Trust, 170 young people engaged with live government projects, and 30 work experience placements filled. So, sir, this government absolutely understands the need to ensure that we are supporting local businesses and that we are helping to support and develop local skills and talent. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Deputy Kirsten.
Thank you, sir. In some recent projects I've seen, no scoring was given to the ability to attend meetings in person, no scoring was given to the knowledge of local government or the processes essential to that procurement. Scoring was rated on corporate rate cards per hour and not the total proposed project spend, and technical scoring was inherently weighted to larger organisations who could demonstrate resources aligned to single skills, despite the risks of subcontracting. Does the Minister consider that the knowledge of the local context and the ability to deliver services in person has any value? And if so, why are these not being scored in so many procurements?
Sir, I don't know what procurements the Deputy is talking about, nor why he would have seen them, but so I can't comment on those specific cases. We have to accept that there are some skills we simply cannot source in Ireland. There are some things we simply cannot provide locally. Often when there are off-island suppliers, they are partnering with local businesses. And an example of that, a local provider has recently expanded their capability and developed junior resources in Jersey to support SAP systems working closely with digital services. That company, via involvement in Project Trident, have sponsored 13 individuals over 3 years. Current engagements have led to continued collaboration with Highlands College, leading to the sponsorship of 2 local individuals in SAP training, leading to employment. So by virtue of that partnership, a local business has clearly developed resources and skills to support SAP by virtue of working with an off-island partner. We do, however, have to look at who is capable of delivering the services we need, but the involvement of local businesses is very much at the forefront of our continuing efforts. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. In the recent Public Accounts Committee review on the government procurement process, which I'm part of, representatives of local businesses raised strong concerns about the complexity, lack of communication, and flexibility of the procurement process, not being aware how far they were to be selected. How is the Minister intending to solve these issues to make sure that procurement process better values local sourcing and uses any time when possible the local talent?
I thank Deputy for a question. Clearly, I don't believe I have seen a report from the PAC on that piece of work, so I don't know exactly what was said, but I do accept that businesses, local businesses, have expressed some concerns about how the project works. We are continuing to try to work on that. Part of the new process will look at how we engage in a better way with local businesses. For example, Meet the Buyer events will be undertaken to encourage feedback on the proposed changes as these are developed, and that will be part of our review. I think we also have to just have some degree of context. I think the businesses that PAC saw, I don't know how many businesses those were, but we have the Government of Jersey has some 2,500 suppliers. I have asked for breakdowns of where those suppliers are based. It can be difficult to assess, but we absolutely have heard that there are local businesses who struggle with the process, and we are looking to improve our processes. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy Kovac. I have Deputies Gardner, Renouf, Balash, and then the final supplementary, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Follow the Treasury Minister response. I would like to emphasize that the Public Accounts Committee seen representative from the Chamber of Commerce, Institute of Directors, and Construction Council, all 3 organizations representing their businesses. Committee evidenced that the business owners feel unable to raise these concerns with the government for fear of being rejected from the future tenders. They raised it on behalf of the organization. What the Minister is going to do to encourage and to have a proper communication that the businesses will not experience fear to give a feedback to the government.
So I just find it astonishing that in Jersey, people are supposedly afraid of talking to government. I mean, perhaps they are, but I just find it astonishing that people think they can't talk to government for fear of being excluded. We have to remember that procurement decisions are not made by Treasury. In the great main, Treasury set processes and policies and procedures, and those are then affected within departments across government. Clearly, we have issues to make sure that those processes are affected properly, and while I accept that Chamber and IOD and the Construction Council will have come forward, we do not necessarily know of their total membership how many businesses. There may be a small number of businesses out of the 2,500 are not having a positive experience. I hear that, and we will seek to address that as best we can. But really, if people do not come forward and tell us about their experiences, we can't fix the problem. And I'm sure there are lots of sources that the government, they can come forward and tell us where there's a problem, and we'll listen. So, thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Gardner?
Absolutely. The evidence of the survey the Chamber of Commerce conducted, 79% of the businesses are not satisfied with the government procurement processes. Would the Minister personally find a way to engage with the organisation and to ensure that there will not be, they can speak openly and not have consequences of them feedbacking government direct?
So yes, indeed, the Chamber of Commerce shared those survey results with me at the end of last week. She says 75%, 79% were not satisfied. My recollection is that there were 43 businesses replied to that survey, and of those 43, some did express themselves to be either satisfied or not engaged in the procurement process. Not all of them completed every question. So again, I'm coming back to the issue of context, that we have 2,500 suppliers. It's absolutely right that the system works for everybody, but if there are, we appear to be talking about a relatively small number of suppliers who are having issues with the procurement process. There may be a great range of reasons why that is. But we will be looking into that. I have gone back to Chamber and said we are very happy to work with them to understand what the issues are and to try to resolve them so that local businesses can engage properly in our procurement processes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's been interesting listening to these exchanges, because what it seems to me is that there is a set of policies that the government has, and then there is the execution of the policies. And from Deputy Alex Curtis, we heard very clear demonstration or example that he's heard of what seems to be where the policies are not being applied properly. Does the Minister think that the problems here lie with the policies or with the execution of the policies?
So, as I say, without having seen the paperwork that Deputy Curtis has seen, I can't comment on that. Much will depend on the nature of the procurement, the nature of the supply. If you are looking for, it really depends on the nature of the supply, whether those are available locally, value. There are various criteria that are involved in the procurement process. And there will be issues, I have no doubt, there will be issues in a small jurisdiction. If you have to think of your own, we all, I'm sure, have the same thought process. If you are wanting some decorating done, do you go and get 3 quotes from 3 completely independent people, or do you go to the person who did the decorating for you last time and did a great job? We have to address personal relationships in small islands, and that if somebody has gone to someone previously who has done a very good job, it may be they are more inclined to go back to that person the next time they need a similar job done. That is speculation, I emphasise. We will continue to work with departments to make sure that procedures are rolled out and are operated effectively, but we are doing a project to try and make this as good as it can be. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, implementation is often a question of leadership, and it could be that a strong lead from the Minister and from the government in instructing departments to ensure that they follow the processes in place and don't use, for example, devices whereby, of the type that Deputy Curtis mentioned, where you can surreptitiously exclude organisations by changing criteria and so on. to the advantage of some others. So would the Minister agree that she could do more, perhaps, to enforce those rules that are already in place and encourage people to follow them?
Sir, I do somewhat object. I'm sure you didn't mean offence, but I do somewhat object to the use of the word surreptitious, because that suggests a degree of bad faith in the procurement process and a degree of manipulation of the process to make sure that some people get work instead of others. I would certainly hope that is not the case, and it would be... I think if people were doing that, we would have to look at that very, very seriously. Leadership does come from the central team. They are there to provide advice and support. The accountable officers have their part to play. Ministers have a part to play in their own departments. And accountable officers in those departments have to feed that message down to everybody doing procurement in their own teams, that procedures must be followed properly and that they should not be simply giving jobs to their next door neighbour, for example. Procedures have to work. That message, I think, is very clear, will be coming very clear from Central, and we will continue to emphasise that. But we need everybody in government involved in procurement to play their part and make sure that those procedures are working fairly. Thank you.
Deputy Balash.
So I think my question would be repetitious.
Final supplementary, Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister asked why I've seen procurements. I've seen them because industries are tired of seeing a procurement system that sees that scores a it sees.
Could you ask a question?
I can, sir.
Not
Yes.
respond to a question posed by the Minister.
No, of course. Does the Minister seriously consider 10% weighting on social value to be any more than a fig leaf? And will she commit to examining the scoring methodologies used and ensure that common sense metrics such as those I gave are considered?
Sir, I don't believe they're a fig leaf. I think they are one of the best mechanisms we have to make sure that we are getting social value out of our procurement process and that local businesses are very much involved. I will give you one further example of that. In the digital sector, the development of a system and support for Pillar 2 that we've just been discussing is aimed at on-island capability, and inclusion is a key requirement. A seminar of over 40 local on-island suppliers was held just towards the end of January to tell them about what we're looking for, to allow people to prepare for that procurement, and further engagement with suppliers will be planned as part of that procurement activity. We are doing everything we can to make sure that we get the best people in Jersey. And of course, we do have to recognise that while we want local people, we must also get the right degree of skills and value for money, and those also have to be at the forefront of our minds. Thank you, sir.
Did you wish to raise the defo on Deputy?
Yes, sir.
Right, defo is raised on Deputy Moore. We come now to question 10 that Deputy Wall will ask of the Minister for Housing. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain the processes and procedures that ensure social housing providers set rents at 80% of free market levels, and advise what independent checks are made to verify that this policy is adhered to?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Just by way of brief correction, that the rule isn't that social housing providers set rents at 80% of market levels, it's that they set them up to 80% of market levels, and they are more than welcome to charge less than that, and there are many tenancies in the social sector that charge less than that. But sir, for the policy of setting rents at up to 80% market levels, there isn't a government-imposed system on the social housing providers to calculate that. They have their own. But by way of example, Andium uses the services of estate agencies and surveyors to inspect a significant sample of their stock throughout the year. They establish what market rent would be across 45 archetypes of homes, which they use to extrapolate across the whole of their stock. Andium's asset management team use that to then establish what an 80% target rent would be and check against what they have in existing tenancies to make sure that it's consistent. So if any evidence is presented to me that suggests that processes aren't being applied properly, I would take that up directly with the social housing provider, as it's the housing minister that sets that rent policy. We do not have a fully independent process for checking that. That would be the role of a social housing regulator, but this Assembly in the past has not supported establishing one.
Supplemental question, Deputy Wall.
I have, sir, to an extent in that the Minister has kind of answered to an extent. I'll give this a go and then maybe you can comment on this. So I've been contacted by a constituent who is currently resident in a 3-bedroom home provided by a social housing provider. They currently pay £2,160 per month. A leading property agent advises that depending upon location, current rents for 3-bed properties range between £1,800 and £2,200. This is easily double-checked. Can the Minister explain why this tenant might find themselves in this situation, and would he be willing to intervene to ensure this family pays a rent in line with social housing policy?
So if this is the person who I think it is, it's someone who I've met on multiple occasions, and I've explained to this person that I am simply not convinced that Andium haven't followed their processes accordingly for that property. If I can be physically given some evidence that suggests otherwise, then I certainly would take it up. But from what I've seen, I'm not convinced that that's the case.
Well, I have Deputies Ozef, Conatapis and Saviour, Deputy Renouf, and then final supplementary, no more question. Deputy Ozef.
I'm sorry that I can't ask the question in detail because the state's website says currently undergoing maintenance, so I can't actually get the house price index up. But from memory, sir, the house price index shows quite rightly both purchase houses and rentals. Does the Minister not agree that the situation in relation to rent levels has got so high in recent years because of a lack of supply and other matters, that actually he is probably needing to review the maximum rate of 80 because it's simply not affordable? Did you not agree?
Yes, I absolutely do agree, sir, and I am always honest about this point in that I think that benchmarking social housing rents against market levels is not the best calculation system for social housing rents because it doesn't take into account the affordability for the tenant. And if the point is to provide affordability for the tenant, you would think that another benchmark might be more appropriate. But we are where we are. That is the system that the Assembly adopted 10 years ago when establishing Andium homes. And if we were to move to a different system, that would require a significant look at Andium's financial model, including the financial return that Andium provides to Treasury. I've made clear that I'm absolutely in favour of examining that. But I will say, sir, that there is at the moment no foundational document that says what our social housing rents policy is because it's split over different documents, different ministerial decisions, different states' decisions, and I am in the process of trying to consolidate that all into one official foundational policy document, and from there that would provide a basis for further alterations to the policy in future.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
So would the Minister understand the frustration that a backbencher such as myself has when he says, oh, that's the problem, I'm going to regulate it and can't do anything about it. Would he actually agree that he needs to get in front of the problem and deal with the supply side issue rather than trying to basically deal with the proverbial bolted horse?
So I'm pleased to say that I haven't the faintest clue what the Deputy is talking about. Andium is on site delivering hundreds of homes. They are a significant provider for supply in our rental housing market. And he asked about getting in front of the issue, sir. Sir, I voted against the social housing rents policy 10 years ago when it was brought forward. He voted in favour of it. I would absolutely like to see it change, but that will require funding. And every time I or a member of my party proposes changing funding mechanisms, the majority of the Assembly vote against it. So we have to deal in the real world and not where I prefer things to be.
Well, Conatapis and Saviour.
My question's been answered.
Deputy Renouf.
So can I confirm that the calculation that is used to calculate rents for social housing would enable rents to fall should rental prices go down, as I believe they have done? And is he able to comment on whether this process is currently going on?
So So it would fall for new tenancies, but the process for existing tenancies, if there's a change in market conditions, is that the rent itself wouldn't be reduced, but it would be frozen until the effect of inflation would be that it would hit the 80% point. That I think was established when the policy was changed from 90% market rate to 80% market rate. So there are lots of tenants in Andean properties at the moment who are in the middle of a multi-year rent freeze.
Further or supplementary question, Deputy?
Yes, sir. Is he aware that the social housing providers have adjusted their 80% rule for new tenants in line with what would be expected given that rents have been reported to have fallen? Can you confirm that has actually happened?
No, I can't because, well, firstly, because they have a consistent ongoing process of analysing their stock and engaging with private sector advisors on that, I am presuming that it's already being done. I don't have any reason to doubt that system, but as I said, if there's any evidence of cases of it not being applied, then I would go by that. But let's just remind ourselves that we don't have exactly accurate rental data for how rents are being charged in the market. We have the house price index, but that is only for advertised rents, not actual rents. We have a complete gap of data at that point, so that there is a degree to which some of this is done in the dark based on the best advice that can be gotten.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wall.
Yes, so when does the Minister anticipate building the database for calculating rents?
So as part of the proposed changes to the residential tenancy law, I will be proposing that a requirement is put forward for landlords when they apply for their rented dwellings licence to fill in one extra box that just says, and this is the actual rent that we charge. That I think is the least bureaucratic way of possibly doing that. But if that's adopted, as I hope it is, it would take a little while from that point to then start getting the full picture, because we'd only get that when they renew their licence, and that's a 2-year licence, so it would take a little while.
Well, we come now to question 11 that Deputy Alex Curtis will ask the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to oral question 100 from 2024, will the Minister advise whether any changes to the contracts for the sale of government mapping data have occurred since January 2024, and when the contracts for the 2 current providers expire?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. So I can inform members that the Geospatial Board agreed on the 7th of March 2024 to a further 12-month contracting extension in line with clause 50.1 of the current business partner mapping contracts. The contracts for the 2 current partners have therefore now been extended to expire on the 31st of October 2026. Ideally, I would have been able to provide this information to the Deputy when he asked his question in May 2024. I should also inform the Deputy and members that ministerial responsibility for this subject is due to be transferred back to the Environment Minister in the coming weeks. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister, before he hands that power back, commit from his side not to renew such contracts again until a broader review and consultation of the commercial model for data is agreed, as we discussed back in 2024?
Thank you, sir. Sir, the contract does not allow it to be extended any further, so it's been extended to the furthest point back in March and can't be further extended. Thank you, sir.
Very well. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister think that the charges made for accessing this data, this public data, are fair and reasonable?
So I think I've answered this question before. So the information, mapping information is available free of charge for the public online and at the library, but there are commercial benefits to using this, and I think before any new contract is entered into, the whole framework will need to be reviewed. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Reniff.
So just listening to the careful wording of the Minister there, can he confirm that the renewal of this contract happened without his notice, without him being involved?
Sir, that is the case. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question to that?
Yes, sir. And therefore, when he gave the answer earlier in the, last year to Deputy Curtis on this matter, Was he not informed at that point by officers that the contract had been
Sir, I can only give the information that's presented to me, sir, and as I said in my initial answer, I would have much preferred to have been able to give the information to the Deputy when he first asked me in May 2024. Thank you.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister advise whether the Minister of Environment will be taking responsibility for the officers in the geospatial team who will obviously manage future contract, or whether it's just the ministerial responsibility?
So the detail has yet to be worked out, and that's why the transfer has been slightly delayed. Thank you, sir.
Very well. We come to question 12. The Deputy Porrier will ask of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Following recent occasions when food supplies in shops have been low, will the Minister explain the reasons behind this shortage and advise what steps, if any, are being taken to ensure that there is consistent and regular supply of food in the island? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, all the recent cancellations have been due to seasonal bad weather. The winter season can make sailing cancellations more likely, as I'm sure we all know. However, as of 31st of January, there were in fact fewer sailing cancellations this year than across January 2024. In events such as these, consumers sometimes may notice depleted stocks of certain fresh food items in some retail stores. Whereas this is often a visible indicator of a certain level of sailing disruption, retailers are able to maintain good levels of dry and ambient food products for longer periods. We have seen in recent years that Jersey's supply chain is resilient, particularly during COVID and through Brexit. But government closely monitors risks and any impact to its operation. In collaboration with the emergency planning teams, the government and ports of Jersey maintain a number of functions to monitor and secure Jersey's supply chain.
Supplemental question, Deputy Porrier.
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister outline what the trigger points are for any emergency supplies that would come into the island?
Sorry, sir, would the Deputy repeat his question?
Are there any trigger points for emergency supplies to come into the island? What are the trigger points?
That would depend on which emergency supplies the Deputy is referring to.
I think in this instance we're referring to lack of food supplies within our supermarkets.
I'm not aware of those trigger points. What I know is that my department and, as I said, even the emergency planning team maintain good and close links with supermarkets to understand their stock levels. And when there is a depletion of stock to an extent, then they would act on that. So during the whole of COVID and during disruption caused by Brexit, at no point was it needed that we had emergency food supplies delivered to the island. That was never necessary. I can certainly seek to find out if there are particular trigger levels, but I'm not sure that there would be.
Have Deputy Curtis, then Deputy Kovacs, then final supplementary. Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. A fish processing facility for freezing fish and shellfish could assist in ensuring food security in Jersey. Is the Minister informed of the progress of this processing facility, which was also a priority in the Marine Spatial Plan? And if so, can he update us on the progress?
I'm unaware that any fish processing facility appears in the Marine Spatial Plan. That wouldn't seem an appropriate place for such a facility to appear. There is, as I understand it at the moment, no work ongoing on a fish processing facility. So.
Supplemental question, Deputy Curtis.
Yes, sir. I believe that it is in the Marine Spatial Plan, but this has been a matter in discussion since 2021. So could the Minister explain why he is not up to date on any progress on this matter?
To date, I have received no business plan. I have received no proposition from anyone in the marine resources sector with regard to a fish processing plant. All I've heard is people mention that it could be a good idea to have one. And I've said to the marine industry, provide me with a business plan and show me how that will operate, and then we can talk about it. But to date, I've not received any of that information.
Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. Given this growing and ongoing concern over empty shelves when ferry can't deliver for any reason, which strategic recommendations from the recent food system resilience report commissioned by his department to Haifa will the minister prioritize to address this issue on long term and ensure a more reliable food supply?
I'm sorry, sir, I'm going to have to ask the Deputy to repeat the
Yes,
question.
Deputy, could you say it again? I absolutely didn't hear almost any of it. So.
No worries, thank you. So, given this growing and ongoing concern over empty shelves when ferry can't deliver for any reason, which strategic recommendations from the recent food system resilience report commissioned by his department to Haifa will the minister prioritize to address this issue on long term and ensure a more reliable food supply?
The report that the Deputy mentions was commissioned by Farm Jersey, and I could not state which strategic recommendations from that report are appropriate for this. Thank you.
Do you have a supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes. If the minister had to choose one key action to reduce our reliance on the ferry for a consistent food supply that he could start implementing now, what would that be?
So one key action is to have a much more reliable ferry service. And indeed, the new ferry service that we will see come into operation at the end of March will be providing greater lane meterage, which will enable faster reduction in backlogs. And obviously, because it's a Jersey-only service, those vessels will have greater space on them. So we should be able to see any backlogs being reduced much more quickly. So.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Porre.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for his initial answer, but I really feel that the answer of the Minister saying the food supply is robust is not the case on the day-to-day. So is it fair to say that the Minister is relying on the new boat coming in March with a new contract to actually improve considerably the food safety of the island? Thank you.
So food security is of the utmost importance to me and my department. There has been no evidence to date of our supply chain resilience being in any way endangered. It is, life on an island is the case that there are times when supplies are disrupted. We live on a small island in the sea. That's a reality of life here. But to date, and I spoke to a big supermarket retailer recently, to date, yes, supplies get run down, but they don't run out. We live in a just-in-time society where food is expected to be delivered at all times, but living on an island, that is difficult. But to date, there has been no problem with food security. So.
Very well, we come to question 13. The Deputy War will ask the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state the total number of individuals working in the island broken down by registered or licensed status for each of the years 22, 23 and 24, and detail the total amount of revenue generated by the issuance of licences and whether the revenue has been ring-fenced for Skills Jersey?
Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. As at December 2022, there were 5,240 registered roles. As at December 2023, there were 5,890 registered roles. The December 2024 figures have not yet been published, sir, but as at the June 2024, the totals registered roles were 6,170. In 2022, the registered fees income was 329,600. In 2023, registered licenses fees total was 342,658, and in 2024 the total was £356,527.50, sir. Skills Jersey receives a guaranteed amount each year of £300,000 from the income received from registered fees, sir. The publicly available labour markets report published by Stats Jersey report on this data, sir, in June and December each year.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, sir, thank you. So my question to the Minister is an attempt really to demonstrate the level of what is effectively the stealth tax being levied on local businesses by government departments. I would, of course, add charges which are applied by JFSC, JOIC, place a refreshment, alcohol license, etc. The consistent theme in all of these are charges made by government. If the Chief Minister had a magic wand, I'm sure he wished he had one on occasions, which charges does he believe could be removed tomorrow and give some solace to local businesses?
That does somewhat stretch outside the ambit of the question. You may have intended a result, Deputy, but you've asked about the particular number of individuals and money raised under a particular regime and system, and I'm not sure, I'm afraid, that falls to be answered. If I can say so, if you wish to rephrase it in some manner, but I don't think you can stretch into all other areas.
How would the Chief Minister look to, apologies, just get my brain working here. How would the Minister...
Take as long as you need.
Thank you. Lunchtime. How would what strategy could the Chief Minister employ to reduce the cost of business that is driven by government charges?
Well, sir, we want to keep government charges to business as low as possible. In relation to the charge for registered staff, that was introduced in 2018 and approved by the States Assembly to deliver an income to put towards Skills Jersey, as is happening now. And it was considered during the discussions in relation to providing support on the journey to a new minimum wage that this fee be reduced. But it was decided to keep that going and continue to support the provision of skills, and that's perhaps one area for consideration. Do we think it's worth charging employers for registered fees? Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to use that money into skills. So there is a method and a reason for why we do it, but of course that can be open for debate at any time. I think it's up to government. A lot of these fees are based upon a cost recovery calculation. We aim to where we're not using the money to put into something like skills, we look to recover costs. So I suppose that the best strategy is for government to be as lean and productive as possible, so the fees we charge to businesses can remain as low as possible. We've also, sir, capped increases on government fees and charges at 2.5% to help in the battle against inflation in our own small way, sir. Thank you.
We come to question 14. I might say, Deputy War, of course, the Chief Minister will be asking questions, and if you wish to move in that direction, it will be open to you to do so. Question 14, the Deputy Ranif will ask also the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Following recent comments from the Deputy Chief Minister to the media on this matter, will the Chief Minister detail what plans, if any, there are to amend the Freedom of Information Jersey Law 2011?
Thank you, sir. There are currently no firm plans to amend the law, but the government would like to review the law to ensure it is still fit for purpose, and ministers have therefore asked officials to consider some options and recommendations. It's now more than 10 years since the law was introduced, and in other jurisdictions, as in other jurisdictions, I should say, I think there is an opportunity to review, look at the lessons learned, and potentially make improvements to the law. Ministers are conscious that FR requests now cost in excess of £1 million a year, and that the volume of requests has increased considerably, now exceeding 1,000 requests a year, sir. A reasonably small number of requesters make up around 50% of the 1,000 requests we are receiving per annum. But of course, we don't want to restrict provision to freedom of information, quite the opposite. I think the Deputy Chief Minister raised one of the things we would like to do is make information more available, more readily available to the public, to perhaps reduce the necessity or the need for a freedom of information requester.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ranif.
Yes, sir. Can the Chief Minister give us a little more detail on this review that he is proposing? Who is leading the review? Does it have a terms of reference? And when will it be expected to report?
I can provide terms of reference to the. I can't recite them. So right now, review is being led by the Cabinet Office, and it's expected to report later this year. So, but I'll tie down those details and let members know once we've agreed internally the parameters and the timescales.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister mentioned an aspiration to make data more open. Can the Chief Minister give any examples of where a freedom of information request has led to the continued and automated publication of the data requested?
I'm sure there has, so I couldn't list any examples right now, but it's a good question, and I think it's valid because that the information we give out under F&I requests, that data will be important in guiding how we might make improvements and what information we make more readily available.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister agree that as part of any review, understanding how many times the same data is repeatedly published versus the opportunity to publish it open by default, as mentioned, should be a key part of that review, and that the Minister should look to implement more open data prior to looking to cost cut by reducing access to data?
Yes, absolutely. We do need to learn from what's happened over the past 10 years. All sorts of lessons, both positive and negative, so I would agree with that.
Deputy Gardner, then Deputy Jeune, then final supplementary. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. There is a long outstanding action from the government to extend freedom of information to arm's length organizations. How this action will progress forward, or it will also go back now to the review?
Well, that will be part of the review to legislation, because we'd have to change the legislation if we were to extend that. And we are currently developing proposals, as requested, to extend law to ALOs in a phased manner alongside strengthened commercial exemptions. As part of this, officials may also come back to Council and Minister with other suggestions for improving the law. All that is yet to be decided, but it is work in progress.
Supplemental question.
Absolutely. I'm welcoming that the freedom of information to extend to a law is in progress. Would the Chief Minister give a bit more details? What does it mean, phased approach?
A phased approach broadly means we would, depending on what the proposals are and what we decide to accept and how we decide to implement them, so could mean, so it's difficult to say exactly what it means without knowing what the detailed proposals are, but it broadly means that we, rather than bring everything all at once, we'll bring it in a phased and timely manner, so to allow the organisations it impacts upon to deal with it appropriately.
Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Alex Curtis asked a question about availability of more data. I was wondering whether the Chief Minister could maybe explain a bit more about what he means by the government being more open. So hopefully that will then reduce the amount of freedom of information requests that were needed. But what kind of actions does that entail when he says about openness, and what kind of instructions would he be giving his civil servants to be more open?
Well, I think initially, sir, that looks at the information we gather from government functions and using our IT platforms to make that information public. And as Deputy Curtis pointed to, we can get a theme from previous Freedom of Information Acts to look at specifically areas, requests where we get repeated information. From difficult off the top of my head, but there are facts and figures and statistics that we have that we don't publish that perhaps we could do, sir. And all of that, sir, will help, of course, to promote the democratic principles that the government want to continue to promote.
Supplementary question, Deputy?
Yes, thank you, sir. I believe many times those that use the freedom of information tool is because that they may have tried to begin with to get the information from civil servants, but they have been told that that information, they are unable to disclose that information. Therefore, could the Minister give assurance to Jersey citizens that when they are phoning up for that kind of information from now on, that they will have much more access to that and not have to do freedom of information requests?
Well, of course, it depends what's being asked for, how sensitive, how commercially sensitive it is. But the aim is to make more information public, to reduce the requirement for an FO, for freedom of information a request. I can't say exactly what that looks like, but the aim is to be more transparent, to provide more information, to make more information readily available, so to potentially extend some freedom of information to arm's length organisations, so whilst at the same time protecting the commerciality of some of those organisations. That's all the work in progress. But I want to stress, the aim is to do this more productively, to make information more readily and more easily available.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renf.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the thing about freedom of information is that it's very easy to champion in principle, but harder in practice. And the Deputy Chief Minister was quoted as saying that people should just pick up the phone and ask government departments for what they need. The issue being that the Freedom of Information Act sits there as a backstop to when those requests are turned down. Does he agree that that backstop is very, very important, and the independent oversight that comes from the Information Commissioner of that law is the thing that means that there can be independent arbitration of whether or not something is in the public interest or not?
Well, I would think so, sir. I mean, obviously, it can depend upon. I certainly agree with that principle wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Well, we come to question 15. The Deputy Jean will ask the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister outline what specific actions, if any, are being implemented to reduce PFAS contamination in Jersey's water and environment, and provide a timeline for achieving measurable progress in addressing this pressing issue? And if no actions are being implemented, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And so can I start right off at the beginning by saying that I am committed to ensuring the safety and quality of our water supply and mitigating the effects of PFAS to protect public health and our unique island environment. So in conjunction with the Health Minister, I am taking action and have done so most recently by putting together and prioritising a multi-department water quality and safety programme that consolidates various projects into a single governance structure and provides a complete and coordinated response to PFAS concerns. This programme involves many officers and resources, and they are focused on providing information to the public and delivering the results of research on this emerging field of science. We also have the expert advice of our PFAS panel, which is an independent scientific advisory panel who provide evidence-based advice, guide public health policy and environmental management, and they ensure that our actions are grounded in the evidence and research from world-leading and emerging science. The panel have delivered 2 public health reports last year and are due to publish the findings of Report 3 next month. The 4th report will be delivered in 2025 and will focus on PFAS in the environment, reviewing the latest global standard and treatment technologies. Finally, sir, our regulatory framework under the Water Jersey Law 1972 ensures that water quality is monitored, and Jersey Water's 2024 report has demonstrated 100% compliance with current UK and EU regulatory standards for PFAS. However, with the work of the panel on Report 4, I will be working towards improving regulatory specific standards in Jersey. Thank you, sir.
Well, supplemental question, Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir, and thank the Minister for his response and the actions that he has outlined. 105 islanders who've not lived in the government-tested plume area have independently tested their blood for specific firefighting foam PFAS and reported levels higher than the average in many cases by a significant margin. What is being done to verify these results and assess the full extent of the island-wide PFAS contamination?
Thank you, sir. As I've said, we've had 2 reports. We're having a third on public health. We're working with those people who have been tested originally on how we can help them at the hospital with advice and treatment. And of course, as the Deputy raises, certain people have had their blood tested outside of the plume area. The decision was taken by myself and the Health Minister that we didn't see any point in asking those people to be retested under our own regime. We accepted their results. And we're moving forward to seeing, as a result of the hydrological survey, which I didn't have time to mention in my original response, but I will do now. We've been conducting recently a hydrological survey over the last 12 months. The outcomes of that will be published in the coming weeks, and that is a survey looking at the way groundwater is moving underneath the ground and how other people may have been affected. And I can say to the Deputy that we're doing all we can to solve these problems and to see what we can do to make them better. But I accept that there are people outside of the plume area who have had their bloods tested themselves. Some results are showing levels above the standards we would wish to see, and we want to understand better how those results may have been achieved. Certainly the 4th report of PFAS in the environment will help us to do that as well.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. My question's just been asked.
Deputy Renouf.
So could the Minister comment on the potential impact of PFAS, if any, on agriculture and farming in particular, because of either the use of pesticides, which might have PFAS in them, or the spraying of crops with PFAS-contaminated water?
Yes, sir. If the Deputy had asked me this question 72 hours ago, I wouldn't have had an answer for him. But it has appeared over the weekend that an information request was put in, and the answer was, is there PFAS in agricultural sprays, horticultural sprays? The answer's come back, yes, there is. The work has been done, and it was as much of a surprise to me as others in the industry. But yes, there are 4 products which contain small levels of PFAS, and one in particular is used on the potato crop. I've spoken to farmers over the weekend and again this morning. It's a spray which is used for blight. It's used in small amounts at the end of the growing season. It's a contact spray, so it doesn't work its way through the plant, it just sits on the leaves. But nevertheless, it is a spray which contains PFAS, and my initial discussions with the industry have focused around how we can find an alternative and take it out of use just as soon as possible.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, and on the subject of irrigation water being used on crops, or not necessarily irrigation water, but water, the fact that water in the soil has PFAS in it, is there a concern about that in terms of root crops or other crops?
There's not a concern as such. I'm aware that the water from, for example, the Seymour sandpit is not used to irrigate crops. And while I say there's not a concern, that doesn't mean to say that I'm not looking into the subject. The hydrological survey which I mentioned previously, the results of which will come out, will help inform us as to how much PFAS is moving around under the ground. And the other thing I can say to the Deputy is part of the ongoing work of the PFAS group will be to look at foods grown on the island, and certainly potatoes, to assure the public that levels of PFAS in potatoes that are exported don't exceed any acceptable limits.
I have Deputy Moore, then Deputy Gardner, then final supplementary. No other questions. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned in his first answer that he intends to bring forward regulatory standards for PFAS, our own for the island. Could he tell the Assembly when he proposes to do that?
I can't say exactly when, sir, but I can say that the fourth report from the independent PFAS panel will include recommendations from the research they're doing around the globe. While we meet all the current standards, I think it would be fair to say that countries around the globe are looking to review standards, and they certainly will be coming down. I have indicated the only, let me say, the panel are independent. I have had no contact with them other than the one thing I did was to impress upon them the need for a timely report I don't want to be waiting. I don't want to be held up. So I have asked them to report back to me on water as soon as they possibly can. Once I have their report and their recommendations, I will be sitting down to look at where those new levels might be. In the meantime, and because I don't want to waste any time on this, I'm already in discussions with Jersey Water about where those levels might be, how they might mitigate, what treatment works they would need to put in place, because members will appreciate, I'm sure, that large infrastructure projects don't happen in a matter of months. They take some years to deliver. But nevertheless, I'm working towards new regulatory standards as fast as I can.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Has the Health Minister declared an interest on this matter, given his ownership, former ownership of a company relating to the potato industry and his current continuing ownership of a company that provides water filtration systems?
No, he hasn't, sir, and I can't think of any way that he would be conflicted in that way.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. My question is followed the response that 105 examples were accepted and people is taking care. Would the Minister advise if it's any consideration was given together with the Health Minister to do wider sample to establish concentration of PFAS across the population?
As I said, sir, we have had two rounds of blood testing, if you like. The first one from our residents who live in the plume, and then another private round of blood tests was also taken from people who live outside of the plume. The Minister and I spoke about whether we wanted those people to be retested. We couldn't see any point in that. So what we've done is accepted their levels. The third report from the PFAS panel will help us, will guide us in that. But it's not, I have to say to members, it's not just water, it's not just drinking water that might put PFAS through water ingestion into your body. There are other things as well. The fourth report from the panel will start to look at other ways of PFAS entering your body. There are many different ways. And those people who have been living outside of the plume area, there's a lot of work to understand their history and whether they've lived in Jersey all their lives, whether they've moved around the island, whether they're mains, borehole, maybe they've drunk bottled water. The type of food you eat, everything can have an effect. There's a lot of work to do to understand how PFAS is ingested into your body. So all I can say to the Deputy is work is ongoing, and we hope to have those answers in the future.
Supplemental question.
Thank you. So if I understood correct, and I would ask Minister to correct me, so the results for the people who lived outside of the area would be categorized, and according to this, might other groups of the population will be offered by the government blood testing to establish if there is a concentration of the PFAS and with them as well?
So all I can say is we will continue to work with all these people. Many of them turn up to regular meetings, not only with myself and the Health Minister, but with officers and also independently with the panel, without any politicians or civil servants present. Lots of work's going on. We want to understand these problems just as much as anybody else does, but there is more science needed to understand how people who may not live anywhere near the plume area may have elevated levels of PFAS in their blood.
Final supplementary, Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Following the very recent ruling by the European Court of Human Rights that failures by governments and businesses to address pollution amounts to human rights violation, the Minister just explained that he will revisit Jersey's current legislative framework to tackle PFAS, but also hopefully other pollution contamination effectively. Could the Minister advise further what new environmental laws or regulations he is looking at to address these issues? And does he have the necessary resources to do this work effectively?
So that sounds like a hugely complicated question to me, way above my pay grade potentially, but what I can say to the Deputy, outside of the PFAS work that we're doing, we continually monitor a whole range of subjects within the environment, in the Natural Environment Department, and if she's looking for other instances, I could point her to an ongoing group of people who have been together now for over 10 years looking to reduce nitrates. And it started off as a nitrate reduction group, worked very, very closely between government and the agricultural industry, been hugely successful in reducing nitrates in our water. And that group continues, and I'm happy to be back sitting on it, and we continue to look at ways that we can work with Jersey Water to deliver better water. The PFAS issue is an addition to that, if you like, and one which is vastly more important. But I think they all come under the same remit, and certainly working with Jersey Water into the future, which I want to continue to do. The treatment works which we will have to put in place to reduce PFAS will also help us to address many of the other issues that may or may not be present as some sort of contaminants in our drinking water.
So, sorry, and just for the Minister about the resources, does he have the resources to effectively address these issues?
That was one of the questions. Yes.
Resource is always a challenge, sir, certainly in an environment where government's trying to reduce the amount of money it spends. But I can assure the Deputy that priorities like this one that affect not only our environment for the island, but more importantly, the public health of the island, we'll always find a way to fund those.
Well, we come to question 16. The Deputy Wilson will ask the Housing Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how he is currently working with private developers and landlords to ensure a mix of housing types are made available in the island?
Thank you, sir. The last time that I was Housing Minister, I commissioned an objective assessment of housing need, which provided projections for the types and tenure of housing we would need over subsequent years. And this helped inform the Bridging Island Plan process to ensure that developers have the framework to guide their proposals to ensure it matches what we need. On a number of occasions, I've met with developers as they've been exploring ideas on what kind of housing mix they might apply for permission to build, and we've explored with them what kind of demand there is at the moment, where what sites might lend themselves well to within the rules of the island plan. In particular, right-sizing was an issue that some developers have wanted to explore with me. On top of that, I also often encourage engagement with officers in my department so that they can make sure that what they're applying to build matches what we know we need. And on top of that, I'm also frequently submitting comments to the Planning Applications Committee as developments are coming forward to be proposed, and I may comment on what the mix of tenure or sizes that they are proposing to say whether that matches what we assess to be what we need based on the data.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister advise us what data sources he has at his disposal which are informing his plans for delivering the range of housing need?
Thank you, sir. So I mentioned the objective assessment of housing need previously. I think there was an update done on that. I think that was by Statistics Jersey at some point in the last few years, and they go based on everything, census data, population projections, including, they do their updates on that every year. And of course, what has actually been built in the previous years, because what we project we may build based on island plan projections isn't necessarily what does come to pass in those years. So they'll look at what actually happened and what tenure, mix and size has actually been delivered on.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And it was the Future Housing Needs of December 2023, published by Statistics Jersey. But, sir, is the Minister aware of any data that captures housing desire or want, because there's no point building stuff people need if they'd rather live in another jurisdiction, because what we're building doesn't suit their long-term desires or long-term needs?
That's such a good question. And no, I don't think that there's nothing that I can certainly recall of what you might attempt to call tangible data about desire out there. I'm not sure if there's been questions in the Opinions and Lifestyles survey. I'd have to double check whether that is the case. And building to people's expectations is something that obviously we have to contend with. Just anecdotally, what I can say is that I know that that the shortage of family-sized homes with parking spaces and gardens is something that has been of great concern to islanders in past years because of their worries that if they want to have a family, that will be a difficult option for them. I do, when I speak to people who make that point to me, I do say that that doesn't mean we shouldn't also be building small homes, and we do often get feedback that we're building too many flats, but the more that you do build and the more supply that you provide, the more affordable you may be able to make them. And if you get your foot on the ladder, it's then hopefully easier to get your second step up on it from that point. So there's an interesting dialogue to be had on that, but I'm not sure that proper data on what public desire is on that is collected.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you. Given previous questions that have been used for this data often look at the 2 to 5 year range, will the Minister support any move to collect in future surveys longer term understanding of what housing desire there is? Would he support those moves?
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't quite understand that question. Could you rephrase it?
Would the Minister support any questions used in future surveys that understand long-term housing desire, not short-term housing need?
So it's a good suggestion, and I'll mull that over, and if that's something that could be included in a future survey, then I'm sure that'd be of great interest to us.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, I think the Minister may have partially answered the question I was going to ask in his previous answer, but could he state what he believes from his analysis of the data, where he does think the greatest areas of housing need are at the moment?
So I think the family-sized homes is a serious issue, that we didn't provide a good enough supply on that for multiple years. And I am going to be biased towards the affordable sector in that there has been a great provision of 1 and 2 bed apartments in the affordable sector, and that has enabled us to widen criteria for the affordable housing gateway, for example. But it is the case that there are lots of people, lots of children in particular, who are in homes that are not the right size for them, and we haven't provided that supply. That is why I'm very pleased that we are now starting to see planning permissions coming through for some of the bridging plan rezoned sites, and some of that is now underway, and I hope with a focus on that we can alleviate that part of the needs that I see, certainly when I speak to people and people who come to me to tell me about the inadequate situation in their housing.
Supplementary question, Deputy. Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the Minister what specific initiatives he has in place or examples of current partnerships aimed at delivering a diverse range of housing types? And is he minded to do something about the need to ensure choice in the market?
So I don't know what constitutes a partnership in that sense. We obviously have a constitutional partnership with Andium Homes, and we have one with States of Jersey Development Company, of course. I work particularly closely with both of them, but a bit more so with Andium, and I'm exploring with them options for different pathways that they might be able to provide for people into home ownership. So there are different offers or products we can give to people to move in that direction, but Andium is in a position of being able to use some of its stock to innovate. There's one developer in particular that has been innovating with different schemes to get people into home ownership, and they haven't needed my incentive to do that, but I've told them that I support what they're doing with that. I think they're interesting ways forward. So I don't know if that answers the question. Hopefully it does.
Well, There might be a chance for a question and one answer. Deputy Joseph, question 17.
I was just going to say, sir, I know that the Minister's going to want to give some end question time with good news for St Saviour. Will the Minister provide an update on delivering proposal 23 of the Bridging Island Plan regarding the Five Oaks Master Plan that was approved for delivery before 2025, and given the delayed lack of public consultation and the submission of a planning application in the area without a master plan in place, will he confirm whether it remains a priority and when the provision of St Saviour can be expected to see it implemented?
Thank you, sir. The first thing to say is that consideration of a planning application for the development of affordable homes at Five Oaks on a site specifically zoned for this purpose in the Bridging Island Plan as approved by this Assembly is not contingent on the preparation of a master plan for Five Oaks. Having said that, sir, however, like many parts of the island, there would be considerable value in undertaking work with the local community to consider the current challenges and opportunities for change in and around the local centre at Five Oaks. And any such work might explore how to improve the local community infrastructure and to make Five Oaks a better place to live. This is, however, subject to the availability of resources and capacity, which at the present time is focused on the government's priority for wider planning service reform. So I remain committed to undertake this work and to deliver on the Bridging Island Plan proposal to do this work during the current plan period, but I am unable, unfortunately, to provide a definitive timeline for this work stream at this time.
That brings the time available for question period to an end. And the first period of questions without notice for the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. What action is the Minister taking to address the number of empty shops in town, which seems to have reached a record high, particularly in regard to Horizon and the waterfront? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As I mentioned previously, I believe in this Assembly, there are a number of actions that we are undertaking with regard to empty shops. These always have to be mitigated against the fact that they are, in the main, private landlords that own those empty shops. I think it's first important to state that Jersey has a good occupation rate, but the vacancy rate has risen to just shy of 10% in the past month, and that is the highest on the records that I have. I have instructed officers, in the words I used were, we need to sell Queen Street. In the sense of we need to advertise Queen Street to potential retailers who would want to potentially take up premises there. We have been doing that. We have engaged with retailers in the UK and we have interest from 5 well-known retail brands about coming to Jersey who previously had not considered Jersey until we approached them. We approached them through a kind of conference format. They were at conferences and my officers went there with that. They were armed with a brochure which told prospective tenants in Jersey about the benefits of retail in Jersey, such as the very high footfall, 7.5 million footfall a year, the very low crime and other benefits. These were things that they had not thought about. And now are doing. So I'm very pleased that we have engaged and there are a number of retailers now actively looking at St Helier. With regard to the waterfront, that is very much in the hands of SOJDC. I do not have personally any actions around the waterfront area. I think Horizon being a relatively new building, it's been,
I have to ask you to bring your answer to a close, Minister.
There is work to be done, but it's with SOJDC at the moment.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned footfall. Can the Minister advise whether the number of empty retail outlets has had an effect on footfall through St Helier, and is he funding the costs of measuring such activities? Thank you, sir.
So, government funded, I believe it was government that funded, I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, the additional footfall cameras in St Helier. So there are now, I believe, 3 footfall cameras in St Helier, but they are operated by the parish of St Helier, as is my understanding. I have not seen the results from those recently, and so I have asked my officers to engage with the parish of St Helier to make sure that I receive the footfall counts, so to speak. To my knowledge, we have seen no reduction in footfall over the past year or so. The main impact on footfall was COVID and hybrid working that has resulted at the end of that. we believe that many office workers in Jersey are now working 3 in town, 2 out, which effectively 3 days in town, 2 out of town, which effectively reduces significantly reduce your footfall by up to 40%. But since COVID, I don't think we've seen a reduction particularly.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. In July, the states voted to preserve the 1% for arts, culture and heritage, which meant an additional £438,000 over and above what had been proposed in the 2025 budget. Can the Minister confirm that this additional revenue has been allocated to his department, and can he give an indication of what it will be used to fund this year?
I'm still not entirely sure about where those funds will be used. Treasury have put a proposal to the department, but I was not satisfied, and I have asked officers to push back on that proposal. So until that is settled, I'm unable to say. But the money, in terms of the amount of money, has been calculated, and I'm aware of what that is, and I think it's actually in excess of the £400,000 that the Deputy mentions. But we're still in conversations with Treasury as to how we will use that money.
Supplemental question?
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister could give us a little bit more detail on what that point of disagreement is, and can he confirm that extra money has actually been allocated to arts, culture and heritage, and it isn't the case that Treasury have asked for simply reallocation of funds that have already been spent to be called arts, culture and heritage, and therefore meet the requirement that way?
I can't confirm. I can confirm that the number's been said, and I confirm that allocation has been proposed. As I said, I wasn't particularly happy with that proposal, and I have asked my officers to go back to Treasury and suggest that that's not an appropriate proposal, because it was in the vein that the Deputy has suggested.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister's policy framework for the port sector notes that whilst Ports of Jersey has a public service obligation in law to act as custodian of Jersey harbours, that no formal agreement between government and ports has been reached. Is the Minister aware of any work to formalise how Ports of Jersey should act as said custodian that has occurred in the past 12 months?
Off the top of my head, I really can't answer that question. I'll have to go back to the department to get an answer, and I will circulate that afterwards. Thank you.
A supplemental question for that?
Given the increasingly commercial attitudes of Ports of Jersey, if none has undertaken, will the Minister consider formalising some expectations on Ports of Jersey to ensure it gives sufficient weight to serving the wider public interest?
I think that's a really important suggestion. Yes, there is a public service obligation which extends beyond Coast Guard type services and does extend to Jersey's historic harbours. It is important that Ports of Jersey do maintain them as they should be maintained, and I believe there is potentially, particularly when you look at a Goree harbour, the potential for commercial use there. I don't have a problem with Ports of Jersey becoming more commercial in the way they operate. The incorporation of Ports of Jersey was entirely, as I've said here before, to relieve the States Assembly of the need to find hundreds of millions of pounds in development costs for future harbour and airport infrastructure. They do need to be commercial at ports, but they do have a public service obligation as well, which they do need to maintain.
Thank you, sir. Follow the question about the food security. One of the ways to ensure food security is to increase locally grown food that can be distributed on the island. Would the Minister advise how the funds that were allocated for fishery and agriculture in 2024, which is 6.7 million, affected increase, if it was an increase of local supplied food on the island?
I couldn't say whether there was a quantity increase, but I can tell the Deputy that there has been an increase in the number of smallholder farmers as a result of the rural strategy that we established a couple of years ago, and the funding that followed as a result. So we now have, I believe, 80 smallholders who are all producing for the local community as opposed for export. And so there is an increase in smallholder farming. Some of those smallholders we hope will go on to become larger commercial farmers, and some of those smallholders will potentially remain smallholders and serve the island's needs. I think it is important there is a balance to be struck between exports, which bring the island money, food exports, which bring the island in money, and obviously food for local consumption. And at the moment, for instance, the potato crop is principally for export, But our milk production is principally for local consumption, and some of it is used for consumption. I don't have the actual quantity figures as to how much more or less is being produced, but I can ask. They are produced, and I'd have to ask officers for those figures.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Thank you for the answer. When the Minister thinking to evaluate the impact of the rural strategy and the funds being spent, and what are plans for 2025 to increase production for local consumption?
As I mentioned, the support to smallholders is currently the main way we are encouraging production for local consumption. But there's also, we work very closely with not just Farm Jersey, but through the Cultivate programme and Regen as well. There is a whole movement about growing food in a much more sustainable manner. And that is being encouraged by government, directly by us. And we are seeing the results of that through the growth of this smallholder sector, who are entirely providing food to the local community.
Deputy Chair.
Thanks, sir. I've received a number of complaints from constituents about DFDS's terms, including high helpline charges, £100 round-trip fees for bikes, slower boats, restrictions on dogs staying in cars, and inconsistent pricing. Some seeing trip costs to France rising by over 35% despite discounts. Were these terms clearly presented to the Minister when the contract with DFDS was signed?
The terms of sale, I don't. They were not part of that contract. I have spoken to DFDS about bikes, and I expect to see some change in their costs around that. I think it's really important. Any change is difficult, and any change, somebody somewhere will find something that was different to last time, that in a negative way. We are here creating a ferry service that is going to be resilient and reliable for the next 20 years, and most importantly, get £300 million of investment in our fleet, which will be paid for by DFDS and not by the government of Jersey, because we would not be able to find £300 million, would be my guess, to buy new boats. So we are getting new vessels, and we are going to have a more resilient and reliable service. There are some changes in some areas, and I have asked, where I have seen those concerns, I have asked DFDS to address them. I think one thing DFDS need to do is have a greater local social media presence, so that they can respond to these queries as and when they arise, as opposed to me having to do so for them.
Supplemental question, Deputy Chair.
Yes, sir. So what I'm hearing from the Minister is that, and could the Minister confirm whether he's then confident that Jersey citizens are receiving a better deal under DFDS compared to the previous operator?
In terms of pricing, they're receiving a very similar deal to the one before. Pricing through the tender process was very much, there's the mean value, the mean average price, and then there's the lowest price and the highest price. And through those three mechanisms, we control the prices through the contract. They will in future go up by RPI, so there will be no large price jumps as there have been in the past under the previous operator. There is no big difference in pricing. One of the main changes, one of the main areas that people were complaining about was day trips to France. And the reality is DFDS haven't loaded on their day trip prices yet, so islanders should refrain from buying day trips to France at the moment, because they will get special prices in the future. As a result, some were surprised by the prices that were being returned to them for what they thought was a day trip. But there will be special day trip pricing for the future.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Further to the better business support package being offered in November 2024, can the Minister just update the Assembly on the uptake so far?
I couldn't hear the last couple of words.
Could you update the Assembly on the progress so far? The progress so far?
Progress. I couldn't hear progress or update. The Better Business Support Package grants will be, the applications, it will be live in March. And so there have been no applications that have been processed yet. Jersey Business are providing information to businesses that inquire, and the information is on the Jersey Business website as to the kind of conditions, etc., around the applications that they can submit. But it won't be till March that we see any progress as to, how many businesses are actually applying and how many grants are being provided. That will happen after March.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister clarify where he believes which area of the economy is most in need of a support package, and are officers currently engaged in encouraging businesses to come forward in a proactive way and access the support available?
So the Better Business Support Package, because it's focused on the impact of the living wage and helping businesses that are impacted by the increase in the minimum wage, it is focused on hospitality, retail, and farming and marine as principally. But that said, there are packages within that that are open to all businesses in the island and charities and other organisations, as long as they employ people. My view is that across the economy, we need a step change in the productivity levels of businesses across the sectors. That includes finance, that includes hospitality, that includes retail, where we have seen already large increases in productivity over the last 10 years, let's say, is the agriculture sector. They've done amazing things in terms of productivity, but there's a reality here, which is that the whole of the island's economy needs a significant increase in the productivity. And so there is no one sector that needs it more than any other. All sectors need to engage in productivity increases.
I'm afraid there's only 20 seconds left to go, and I don't suppose you can ask and answer within 20 seconds, Deputy. So that brings the period for questions to this Minister to an end. The next period is for the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Does the Treasury Minister have any plans to review, reduce or remove the buy-to-let surcharge? And if so, what steps are being considered to address its impact on the housing market?
Minister.
Sir, can the Deputy clarify what she means by buy-to-let surcharge, please?
Stamp duty. Sorry, I mean the stamp duty specifically for buy-to-let.
No, sir. I have no plans to amend that for the time being.
Supplemental question?
No, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister advise if the company at the time of requesting dissolution is required to submit confirmation there is no no liabilities to social security, GST and tax?
Sir, I thank the Deputy for her question. That is a very interesting question. I think, like most things, there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. And I believe, I fully anticipate that our laws require that if a company owes tax or social security, it must contact social security or tax and pay those debts before it is dissolved. If directors of a company wish to wind up the company, then they may do so through a solvent winding up, where they pay the debts and distribute any assets to the shareholders, or through an insolvent liquidation, where they will appoint a liquidation practitioner or the Viscount to ingather the assets and settle debts with creditors. I think the issue that the Deputy may be alluding to is a situation where people simply walk away. And in situations where people simply walk away from a business that is insolvent or struggling, we may not know for some time. I think there is a chance that people can simply leave things. If you don't, for example, file annual returns, a company will be struck off. And that makes it then very difficult for any creditors, whether they're trade creditors or members of the public or government, to recover, because you then have to pay a significant sum of money to reinstate the company and then try and locate assets and cover them. I have, on a very high level basis, spoken to someone in the financial services team to see if there is something we can do about that, where people do just walk away and go. I know that in Ireland they looked at trying to make people personally liable if they allowed a company to collapse with unpaid debts. That would be controversial in some quarters, but it is something that I do think we should look at. I hope that answers the question.
Supplemental question, yes.
Thank you. And another scenario, if the company has dissolved and gone through the process for full dissolvement and it has been signed off by the financial services, by the register, does the company need to submit, does the register has a confirmation that they don't have any liability to social security?
I couldn't speak for the company's registry, but I think as a matter of company's law, the directors have to give certain certifications that they have no debts if they are going to wind up a company properly through company's law processes. So I am sure they should technically and correctly give that degree of confirmation. But there will be cases when people simply do just walk away. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. With regard to Project Breakwater, the Minister told Scrutiny last week that she had a briefing a long time ago but hadn't been involved since because it was still a work in progress. Was she therefore surprised to hear the Chief Minister announce on Friday in an interview that Project Breakwater proposals are due to be published next month, that it includes some really good proposals, including how it will be paid for?
Sir, I'm sure when Project Breakwater is duly announced, we will have a full idea of funding. It's clear that ongoing investment in our island is important, and in recent years we have successfully increased our capital spend to the levels needed to maintain assets. Treasury is working on an up-to-date long-term capital plan. That's included in our business plan for this year. Work will be iterative. It will include Project Breakwater in due course, and is expected to show significant levels of investment will be needed to maintain our assets. Project Breakwater will be properly considered by Treasury in due course and before publication.
Supplemental question.
Yes, sir. Is the Minister content that all the key decisions so far seem to have been made without her in the room?
Sir, I believe that my officers have been involved and are giving guidance. As a matter of the full project has yet to come to COM, and I would expect to be briefed at an appropriate time, as you would normally expect. Thank you.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. As we move to independent taxation, the tax department have been making contact with the husbands, either via email or via leaflet in the post. What steps is the Treasury Minister taking to ensure that her department are engaging with the people that are going to be most affected by this change, i.e. the wives?
I thank the Deputy for her question. She raised this with us at Scrutiny. It's a very valid point. We have done what married man's taxation requires us to do, which is to write to the taxpayer. And I think we would have assumed, perhaps wrongly, that the married man will share the information with his wife. I accept that that may not be the case, and we are now considering actively how we reach all people who will be affected by independent taxation, to make sure that they are fully aware that it is happening, and to make sure that where they wish to make an election to continue submitting a single form, that they are able to do so within appropriate timescales. But we will be reviewing our communications plan very carefully to ensure that's the case. Thank you.
Supplemental question. Deputy Joseph.
I know the Minister is very busy and has one assistant minister who's also a minister, so I'm not expecting her to be an expert on everything. But can I just ask, has she had any informational briefings concerning the activities and the oversight of the Receiver General?
No, sir, I haven't, but my understanding is that the Receiver General is entirely independent. I'm not sure he is funded by government, and he is an appointment of His Majesty and will be accountable to His Majesty accordingly.
Supplemental question?
Not at this stage, sir.
Are there any other questions for this Minister? Deputy Renouf.
The Minister announced, I beg your pardon, the Minister announced at the end of last week, I think, that she was discontinuing work on private jet tax. This was in response to Ports of Jersey having increased the landing fees for private jets. Those fees are about, I think, were put up to somewhere in the £60 to £70 region. Other airports in the UK charge hundreds of pounds. what level does she think would be appropriate for private aircraft to be taxed in Jersey?
Sir, perhaps I could just clarify. I'm not sure if the reporting on this has been as clear as we might have hoped. What I have said is that I am pausing work on development of a private aircraft charge this year. That does not mean to say it's gone for good. It has just simply been paused because Ports of Jersey are going to increase their fees for private jets. It's not any private aircraft. I believe it's private jets of more than 3 tonnes. So those will not catch, for example, some of the smaller planes owned by members of the Aero Club. So it will attach to the luxury end of the market, shall we say. Our landing charges are low. I don't believe they have actually come into force yet. I think the increased charges, Ports of Jersey are planning a consultation in the early part of this year with a view to the increased charge coming into play, I think, by the end of Q2. The extra money raised will be ring-fenced by Ports of Jersey for Ports of Jersey's own decarbonisation initiatives at the airport. So in view of the fact that they are increasing their charges and they are limited, I think it's fair to say they are limited in how far and how quickly they can increase charges because those charges are regulated by the JCRA, so hence the need for close consultation. And I don't think it's, given our ongoing work on competitiveness and ensuring that Jersey remains an environment that people want to work, much of this traffic will be for business purposes. I don't think it's a good idea right at the moment to add additional taxes to additional charges. It will be kept under review. We will continue
to bring your answer to
Oh, I'm sorry,
close,
sir.
please.
It will be kept under review.
Supplemental question.
Yes, sir. I think the point I'm trying to get at is, I welcome the fact that Ports of Jersey have made this move and that they are going to fund decarbonisation measures, but the fees still seem very low, and I wonder what argument could be advanced, given that these sums are pretty well small change to the people concerned. What argument could be advanced against putting them higher and using that money to fund decarbonisation more aggressively?
So I think at the moment it does still come down to the question of competitiveness. I agree when we have looked at, when I have seen some comparative numbers, Jersey's figures do look very low in comparison with other jurisdictions. But I can only emphasise that Jersey remains a place where competitiveness in the business environment is very important, particularly with Pillar 2 changes. And it is something, this is a starting point, and again, I believe from Ports of Jersey that because those fees are regulated, they simply cannot double, treble, put them up by multiple amounts. This is a starting point. They will continue, Ports of Jersey will continue to review the consequences and the impacts of the increased charges, and they would hope that the increased charges will lead to more sustainable behaviour by the operators of those jets. And if we don't see more sustainable practices, the charges will be increased further to generate more funds. Thank you, sir. That's what I wanted.
The Connotar of St Clement.
Thank you, sir. Minister, can you inform us what work, if any... Sorry? I'm sorry.
And the Minister inform us, not Minister, can you inform us?
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Thank you, sir, for correcting me. Minister, can you inform us?
No. Can the Minister inform us whether or not?
Can the Minister inform us?
Yes.
Okay. Can the Minister inform us what work, if any, has been done so far in forecasting budgets for the impending health facilities estate, excluding Overdale?
Minister.
So I think this was covered to some degree in our budget discussions this year. We have a budget of 710 million for the new hospital facilities as a whole. That will cover the new hospital facility at Overdale, and it will cover some work in St Saviour and Kensington Place, I believe, is the ambition approach of the team. The breakdown of the allocation of the budget among those three different pieces of work has not been published. It's a phased approach because the phased approach will generate best value for the public and ensure competitive tension when we come to procurement. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Connie.
Yes, please, sir. Can the Minister tell us whether the Minister for Health and Social Services has given you any budget forecasts or estimates for more capital expenditure in the foreseeable future?
Sorry, can I clarify, sir? Does the Deputy mean for health... Apologies. Does the Constable mean for new healthcare facilities or for health, as in the services?
Capital expenditure.
No, we have a budget of 710 million. I have not been asked for further funding, I believe. Thank you.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
I'll be quick. Thank you, sir. Does the Minister believe she has sufficient flexibility to authorise payments to purchase strategic capital assets mid-year should the opportunities arise? For example, commercial space between the price of 1.5 and 4.5 million.
So I suspect that's a loaded question. I'm not sure I fully understand it. Sir, can I have the question again, please?
Well, I'm afraid if you have the question again, we're out of time.
Sorry.
And it wasn't loaded.
I think we have to say that we're out of time. We only have 2 seconds to go. So, very well. The next period of questions is to the Chief Minister and Deputy IA.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister will be aware of President Trump's announcement that he is freezing all foreign assistance for 90 days, which has resulted in the immediate cutting of humanitarian operations across the board. Will the Chief Minister assure the Assembly that he has no intention of doing the same, and will he pronounce his support for Jersey Overseas Aid and all the excellent work that they do to those who are displaced, ravaged by war and suffering from famine? Thank you.
Chief Minister. Supplemental question?
Yes, I think I will, sir. Thank you. Will the Chief Minister maintain his support for the 0.01% increase in the funding for Jersey Overseas Aid in his final government plan at the end of this year to show his continuing endorsement for humanitarian aid? Thank you, sir.
Well, sir, I'd like to, but I'm always reluctant to make financial commitments in this uncertain and unsettled geopolitical situation. So all things being well, I'm sure we'd like to do that, sir, but we have to reserve our position just in case.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. Getting in here early, obviously. The completely different question. We heard the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development speak earlier about how productivity needs to improve across the whole of the economy. In answer to my written question to 2025, I discovered the Social Security Department collected £2.97 million from businesses who employed people of retirement age, but who are no longer paying Social Security. If we are to encourage businesses to employ retired individuals, is it right that businesses are once again still continuing to make these payments?
Chief Minister.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I don't think I have enough knowledge on the subject to provide an answer. I am sorry. That is something I think the Social Security Minister needs to answer, sir, or perhaps the Deputy could put that in writing and we could answer it. I do apologise.
Supplemental question, Deputy Wall.
I'm not doing very well here today, sir, am I?
We all have days like that.
Thank you. I guess let's return to my earlier question and my earlier thrust, which was around charges to businesses. And my again was if the Chief Minister had a magic wand, which charge, which is currently applied by government, would you remove from businesses?
If I had a magic wand, sir, I'd
yes.
quite like to find another use for it. I would think so in relation to the big
in relation to the challenges we face as an island, sir, I mean, I know charges of approximately £54 for registered licences to what he's referring to, but I did explain, sir, previously that charge was introduced in 2018 to provide funding for Skills Jersey, and I think generally that's working well, sir. So the answer is, if I had a magic wand, I'd probably use it to treble or quadruple the size of the strategic reserve in the first instance.
Very well. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. In a recent interview with the BBC, the Chief Minister explained that involving the Treasury Minister would be a distraction to the progress of Project Breakwater. Would the Chief Minister like to explain how?
I did not say that, sir. I did not use the word distraction at all. And I wish members would pay more attention when they watch interviews with me on television, sir. I know it's difficult, it's challenging. So, no, the point I was making, and council ministers have received an update on Project Breakwater. Deputy Binet, along with officials, is leading on that work. And when and Treasury officials are also working with him, because it's important that when he comes back, he wants to present an option, a solution that is not only a design, sir, but a fully funded. That will go through all the relevant procedures. It will go through Treasury Minister, ultimately come back to Council of Ministers for fine-tuning, go to consultation. I think we'll have public consultation on that, and ultimately be a decision for the States Assembly. The point I was making in that interview is sometimes when we go off and we try and put projects together, if there are too many people involved at the early stages, it can be distracting and it can take more time, sir. So I applaud Deputy Binet's focused approach. That's not to say, sir, that we're wanting to exclude anyone from that process, because everybody will be involved in the fullness of time.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. Can the Chief Minister give other examples of where the Treasury Minister has been excluded from projects that will cost taxpayers millions of pounds in funding?
Well, sir, I'm not aware of any where the Treasury Minister has been excluded, because the Treasury Minister controls the purse strings. That I did say in the interview on Friday. And so ultimately, as somebody once said, I don't care who runs the country, put me in charge of the money and I will control everything, sir. And we respect the Treasury's Minister's position, but we can't run the process and spend money ultimately that's not budgeted for. And if we want additional funds, it goes through the Treasury Minister ultimately to the Assembly. And unless the Treasury Minister ever feels left out on anything, so I'm the first to know about it usually. Thank you.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Following my question from last questions without notice concerning the fuel farm, would the Chief Minister kindly update the Assembly concerning the known expiry and the various trigger clauses embedded in the lease that were put in there to be exercised by the government in the public interest in relation to making sure that the island is both appropriate, economic, has resilience, and is the leases are used and the trigger points are used to align Jersey's future use requirements and land use.
Yes, thank you, sir. The current lease for the La Collette fuel farm runs until the 31st of January 2026, and the government, led by the Infrastructure Minister's Department with support from law officers, are currently reviewing the procurement options for a new lease or a tender process, one that will ensure the fuel market is as competitive as possible, and there is long-term resilience in the supply of fuel for islanders. So both the clean-up works and the purchase of equipment clauses relating to the fuel farm have been extended until the 30th of April 2025 by agreement with the Minister and the current leaseholder in order to provide the government with time to consider the procurement options. The current fuel farm is an essential facility for the island and is in the optimum location, giving its adjacency to the port and gas fuel storage facilities. But that's not to say we might not consider other options for the supply and distribution of fuel in the longer term, sir. The facility is able to provide long-term resilience to the island and can be adapted to react to changes in fuel markets and fuel technology, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Sir, I had this issue on my agenda since I was first elected in 1999. I don't want to take up the Assembly's time, but I think it is important. I'm grateful for the Chief Minister to say what he is doing. I've got some concerns, but would he agree to, perhaps with the Minister, to agree briefing the scrutiny panel, which I'm not on this most important issue, because it is fundamental for Jersey's supply resilience and competition, which he will know well.
Yes, I would, sir, and I know the Infrastructure Minister would be supportive of that course of action.
Thank you.
If members are concerned that I have not noted them, I have noted to speak Deputies Wilson, Renef, Jeune, Doublé and Alex Curtis. Whether we are able to do that, I don't know, but they have been noted.
Sir, sorry, I did put my light on right at the beginning at the same time as Deputy War, and I'm not sure if you noticed it because Deputy I was stood up. I did leave it on until you nodded up.
Yes, well, that's the order in which I have noted. There's nothing deliberate about it. I take it from the screen, and when it comes on the screen, that's when I note it. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Further to his answer on written question WQ 28/2025, does the Chief Minister also agree that regulation of our health service is needed and won't be suspended?
Chief Minister.
Yes, sir. The regulation of care legislation that Deputy Luce is leading on, approved by the states in 2022, which ultimately regulates the hospital and the ambulance service, extends regulation to that. We will proceed with that. We're going to phase that in relation to, we're going to introduce the regulation of the ambulance service earlier on. And then in 2022, when that was approved by the Assembly, we didn't have our health board in place. Now we have the health board in place, and we have plans, hopefully, with everything crossed, for the new hospital to be approved imminently. So it's going to the planning committee later this month. We'll be in a position to accurately provide the timeline for the completion and opening of the new hospital. We want to ensure that we dovetail the regulation of health services in the hospital with that timeline, and that's what we're working on at the moment.
Do you have a supplementary question, Deputy?
Thank you, sir. Just a bit concerned about that response. Will he commit to upholding the regulation of care law to protect patients from harm by supporting the full implementation of the work the Jersey Care Commission are undertaking to ensure compliance with professional and regulatory standards in our health service?
Yes, absolutely, sir. We're aligned with that. We're talking about the timing and how we introduce it, but absolutely, we are fully aligned with that.
Deputy Renef.
Thank you, sir. The Health Minister has talked repeatedly about the need for further spending on health. One option is a top-up charge on tax, similar to, say, the long-term care charge. Will he confirm that his government is considering this option?
No, sir, the government is not considering it. I know Deputy Bennett has talked about various ideas in his capacity as Minister. It's not on our agenda to discuss at this stage. It might well come onto the agenda if Deputy Bennett requests that. For the record, I, at this stage, cannot support any additional taxation. I think we need to find a way to manage from the taxation levels we currently have, sir. The answer is no, that's not on the agenda to discuss, but Deputy Bennett might well ask for that to be discussed, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
I guess the converse then is, will he rule out a top-up health charge?
Well, I don't have that autocratic authority over the Assembly or the government, unfortunately. We tend to come to decisions by consensus. So I can't, but I shall certainly not be supporting it based on current information.
Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister explain why his Minister for External Relations has chosen not to issue a formal statement on Rwanda's illegal occupation of territory in the DRC, which constitutes a clear violation of international law, given Jersey's special relationship with Rwanda and numerous financial sector collaboration projects? What message does this silence send about Jersey's stance on international law and ethical partnerships?
I believe the External Relations Minister answered the question earlier on. I can't answer why he, as at this stage, is not putting
a statement out on it, he may well do that. But of course, we do, since it's a fast-moving situation, and we do, of course, welcome the cessation to hostilities that's come about in the last 24 hours. So I also would remind members that the Jersey-Rwanda MOU signed last year has not resulted in any direct funding from the government of Jersey to the Rwandan government or vice versa, and there is no specific financial commitments made under that agreement. So I'll leave that in the hands of the External Relations Minister. I know we at the government are monitoring the situation closely, so and will respond appropriately should things develop further.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, sir. And as the Chief Minister stated, though, there was a ceasefire that's been called recently. The Rwandan-backed rebels continue to control Goma, a region rich in raw minerals essential to global technology. And there's growing concern that Rwanda seeks to exploit these resources, which could involve facilitation by the finance sector.
You do have to ask a question.
Could the Chief Minister clarify
waiting.
what steps are being taken to ensure that Jersey's finance industry does not unwittingly facilitate or support such illegal activities?
I can't state at this stage, sir, what steps the financial services sector might take, sir, but I'm sure it's a matter that's being considered, and I will discuss that with the Financial Services Minister.
Deputy Dublé.
Have the plans for a health restructure been brought to Council of Ministers?
We've had, I'll have to, I mean, there's been no official decision by Council of Ministers. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. Oh no, we've agreed, sorry, I'm getting mixed up, we've agreed the name change there. No, Council of Ministers is aware of Deputy Binay's intention of that, monitoring the situation. He's keeping ministers updated. No formal permission or proposition has been made to the Council of Ministers as yet, sir, but we're aware of the work that's happening in that area.
Thank you. Can the Minister advise when this will happen?
That's really largely up to the Health Minister, so we're led to believe that he'll be coming. Sorry, that is largely up to the Health Minister, so we are out of time, but I believe it will be this year. Thank you.
Very well. Just remind members that we will seek to deal with the appointment to the panel, the authority, I should say, immediately after the luncheon adjournment. Is the adjournment proposed?
Yes, sir.
Very well. The Assembly stands adjourned until 2:15.